get started. We're good? All right, thank you very much. We have a long meeting tonight, or a long series of meetings, but we're gonna get started with a public school board meeting. We have a few items on the agenda, so I'd like everyone to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
I have an addition to the agenda.
Okay. Christine? What is that gonna be?
That is going to be a line transfer of $21,675 for custodial service fees.
Okay. Good, we'll add that to the agenda. And I guess the other change to the agenda, we don't have public comments on here, but I know we have a series of hearings tonight where people will be able to speak to the bond that we're proposing and the budget. But as with any school board meeting, I'll just open up the floor to see if there's any public comments. As we always do, being that there's nobody in the room, I guess I'll ask the online audience if they'd like to raise their hand and we'll give you a chance to comment. And again, this isn't specific. There'll be chances later in the night to comment on the warrant articles, the bond, and the budget. Just given that we assuming we're not seeing anything there, we'll move on to the first action item, which is the JREA agreements. And I will hand it over to Regan to lead that discussion.
Sure. So as many individuals here on the board were part of this, you are aware of the content of these. We'll show everyone the content of this. Basically, last year we passed a 3-year JREA agreement. This is not an entirely new agreement. These are proposed changes. We've done something of this nature, very similar with JRSSA. As times continue to change rapidly, we've tried to make certain that we've collectively made good decisions to keep up with the times, with budgetary items in particular, so that we don't fall behind and have massive gaps that we have to make up at some point in time. For instance, if there's examples of districts having to do significant increases in warrants to make up for years and years of not necessarily staying up with the trends in payment and so forth, and we don't ever want to be there because then they have massive tax hikes and so forth. That is not uncommon to do. We've been good about making minor changes, and these are minor financial changes, but they also have the language anyway has big implications for us and our flexibility to work with in a society where it's difficult to hire people. And so in particular, some of the language that the board put forth in here and that the JREA has agreed upon, and they have agreed upon this language and the adjustments to the nurse salary scales, give the board some flexibility in how to deal with hard to hire positions. And I'll show you what we have. So this is a proposed nurse salary schedule. Basically, right now we do have 3 nurses. We have 4 positions. One position right now is being filled by a contracted service provider. Through the hiring process, we had several individuals who were offered the position. The salary was a problem at each step of the way with each and every one of them. One did take and say, I think I can take the $10,000 hit, and then ended up saying, actually, my job has given me more flexibility, so I'm going to go with that instead. So we've been having difficulty in this high need area, as we understand that there is a nursing shortage in general. And we need to focus on that, on education and career and technical education around that as well, with our partners over at Conval and so forth. But for now, the here and now, we need to be able to be competitive. So we did not, the nurses lane has always existed. We've had a nurse lane separate from the rest of our teaching group. So all the rest of JREA, the rest of the members or people covered in the JRA. Then there's the nurses. And we've kept it so that it's been separate. So they, even if they have a bachelor's, beyond a bachelor's degree, or if they have a master's degree, which we do have one nurse who has a master's, an MSN, which is beneficial to us. It means they can provide more education if we wanted to go down that route. They would not be able to benefit financially from that. But we're at a point right now where we need to, in the group negotiating, so we need to let them benefit from their degrees and any other types of perhaps certifications they have, although we couldn't find anything specific that was going to be able to help us with these salary schedules. So what we did was we took the existing teacher salary schedule, condensed it a little bit for the nurses, and reassigned the certain columns. So for instance, the MSN column here is simply the master's plus 45 column of the teachers. We're figuring that the nurse job is very different, that if they have a master's plus 45, it's not necessarily benefiting their performance in the same way maybe a teacher's professional development might. Their jobs are very different, but it does mean something. And then at the master's level, having a BSN, which is necessary in order to have certification in the state of New Hampshire for school, and be an RN, be a school nurse. Again, school nurses who are the sole reason, if you are an RN, you're the sole reason why certain kids can even attend school here, which of course saves taxpayer dollars significantly. It's because of if you have a seizure disorder, for instance, and you're using something like a midazolam, there's only one person who's able to provide that, and it is an RN who's willing to do so, or another type of nurse who might be doing it under supervision of that RN. But there's certain medications that teachers, even if they're trained, or other individuals who aren't RNs, if they're trained, aren't allowed to give within the school setting. These people are important to have. Obviously, there's a wide array of needs within our schools. We have more and more individuals with whether it be diabetics, whether it be different types of allergies, whether it's feeding tubes, what have you. More individuals are coming to our school with higher needs. We're a very inclusive environment. We want to remain an environment that is providing great service that way. This is recognizing our nurses. The next slide would be some language that was changed. We have, we have a school counselor over the district kind of coordinator. We have a mentor coordinator. We want to have a nurse coordinator because it's important that our documentation is pristine, that our practices are pristine, that someone is checking up on our AEDs, doing everything. There's a whole plethora of responsibilities that we need to make sure happen. It needs to happen by a person who knows what to look for and how to get the professional development and so forth. That's geared toward nurses, not necessarily teachers. So putting that nurse coordinator in that section 816. Also that 810, just some language around special education. We know that through our budget process, special educators are difficult to hire. And then it's even harder when the state has said that in order to be in certain types of positions, like our intensive learning center in the elementary school, they have to be dual certified in order to do that. Or you have to have two people, one certified in regular ed and one certified in special ed to be able to do the jobs, which could be very costly. Recognizing that they have to have, if they have to have them, not if they have them, in just any type of role, but if the role requires it, that we would give them some extra compensation for that. And then something that we have needed to do for quite some time, and different districts do it in different ways. Some do it a little bit less, some offer a little bit more. We're kind of in the middle of a lot of this with our negotiation, is that if we can't hire somebody in a position, we still want to be able to offer the coursework for kids. We do have certified individuals here who could, if they were to say, give up their prep time for a year, be able to take on another math class or another English class or what have you. And they need to be compensated for that. And so this outlines compensation in those situations. Elementary is a little bit different. It's so very clear cut in middle school and high school with how it does. Elementary, it's very different. So that we have that clause at the end that we would negotiate that with the JREA leadership and bring that to the board and so forth to figure out, how best to handle those situations, which we have one that we won't discuss tonight. And then this is the critical needs clause. This is just basically saying if this board feels like, man, we are not able to get someone in a specific position and it's because we deem it a critical need, we can't find it. This gives us an approach to being able to have a better shot at hiring someone, whether it be offering say it's, again, math is an area of shortage across the nation, right? So if you find someone and you want to hire them and they're like, I'm getting offered, $3,000 more at another place, you can say, hey, let's get you, let's make sure money's not the issue here as much as possible, within reason, of course. And we can do that. Now, if you do that for that one position, you also have to do it for everyone else in that same area during the time frame that this is happening. So there's a level of fairness there, but also a recognition that that person's certification has a lot of value during this time frame when there's a critical need. So I would say they have a value all the time. I'm just saying there will be a heightened value during that time frame. And so that language and the salary schedule, which then we'll talk during the budget hearing about what that implies from a warrant article standpoint. It's about $20,000 a year for the next 2 years. A couple individuals would move across based upon the certifications and the education that they have. After that, it would just stay the same. But it would also allow us to be able to hire somebody who might benefit from having this wage scale. Yes.
So, you probably have more to your presentation, but I just want to say that by bringing this to the Education Association and getting on top of it and trying to not only protect our students by making sure we have the coverage we need, but also by protecting our resources, because since we're required by law to have these professionals, our only option is to contract them from a service which is more expensive. And so,
more expensive and uncertain and
uncertain.
Provides, you have someone who's not, doesn't have ownership with your school system.
Right.
Which
So
we will talk about, I'm sure, tonight.
Getting out ahead on these issues as well as on the critical need issue. It just seems like a good management.
Yeah. No, I think the board members who bargained some of the language were very smart in thinking about the future. One board member in particular indicated we can't just keep coming back if we already know the problem is going to continue on. So let's develop some language that's going to help us deal with things in real time. So that's the presentation on the changes to the JREA. What we need to do to even have something on the warrant that we'll talk later on tonight about. We prepared it just in case. The board would need to vote in favor of adding this, making these amendments to the existing JREA 3-year contract that has already been approved by the voters. Yep, and as you come on in, we have seats right over here. The the bond hearing will start in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really crowded.
Not yet.
We're in a school
I
board
do.
meeting for the
Yep,
first time.
I'll have another thing to have a motion for, but this is important to do first.
I'll make a motion that board ratify the changes to the JREA agreement.
Thank you, Charlie. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
John seconds it. Any questions or discussion? All right, we'll move to a vote. I think because Sandy, I guess I'll ask if you can, to confirm that you're there and you can hear me and, speak, and I think we'll go through a roll call vote. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. All right. So we'll take a roll call vote on this amendments to the JREA contract. Sandy,
Yes.
Lisa,
Abstain?
John,
Aye.
Charlie,
Aye.
Christine,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that passes by a vote of, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 0 to 1. Very good.
Great.
On
So
to the next item.
since the board approves of that language, there are two MOUs. We've talked about this in non-public, and there are two situations that have risen up that within our budget, and we have the funds already within our budget to be able to do this, is an MOU to support the nurse coordinator position for this year. And then also to handle a negotiated one with the JREA for an elementary dual certified special educator who is doing about 1.5 jobs right now and making sure that the intensive learning center is functioning along with another individual who's also in there. They're still a teacher short, but the two of them are working dynamically together. But they're spending their weekends, they're spending their evenings, and so plus all their time in their days during this. There's a little overlap, so it's not like two full jobs, but 1.5 is what we landed on, and so compensating that individual from a budget standpoint, if we separate that from this conversation, from a budget standpoint, the money's there. Again, there's like a 1.5 teachers that we don't have, or two. Well, we don't have the 3 teachers. That's why we have the 2 other individuals coming in there. So, there's the money is in the budget for this purpose, but this is recognizing the work that they are doing, and in the theme of retaining and recruiting the people we need to continue our efforts in this district. And so I would just, before I sign anything like that, I would need the board's okay to sign those types of agreements.
Does anyone have any questions for
Total
Ruben?
cost is it's a little over 47,000 when you take in benefits and all that kind of stuff.
How much?
47.
47,000?
It's I would say not to exceed 48. I know it won't exceed 48 with all FICA, New Hampshire retirement, things of that nature. There's no additional costs with medical or dental insurance. We've identified where to take it from already within the funds that we have.
How do you want the motion stated? We're all sitting here.
To provide this, to provide the superintendent with the authority to sign the memorandum of understandings for that have been agreed upon by with the JREA for Andrea Dion, and who's a nurse here at the school, and Jimmy Gallagher, who's a teacher over at RMS, working in the intensive learning center.
Names again?
Jimmy Gallagher is the individual over at RMS, Intensive Learning Center, and also special educator for, I think, K-2.
JREA and Jimmy Gallagher.
And Andrea Dion is the nurse.
Take a shot.
Okay.
Go for it.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. I'll make a motion to provide authority to the superintendent to sign MOU with JREA and or Jimmy Gallagher and Andrea Dion for services for an amount not to exceed $48,000.
Thank you, Charlie.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Christine. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote once again. Sandy,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So that is 6-0. And we will move on to the item that we added for the transfer of funds for the custodial services.
This one's a little easier. Okay. So I would like to make a motion to approve the transfer of funds of $21,675 for custodial services.
Thank you, Christine. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions or discussion? All right, we'll once again do a roll call vote. Sandy,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
John, Charlie,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
and I will vote aye as well. So that passes 6-0. I don't think we have, that's the last item for this public meeting. I guess I'll open it up again. Once again, we usually do public comments at the end of the meeting. We're going to be moving into a bond hearing next where people can comment on the various budget items, but I'll give a brief period for public comment here if anyone has anything online. Let's guessing there'll be none. I think we just have one more motion for adjournment.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Christine.
Second.
Second. Very good. Any questions or discussion? If none, we will roll call vote. Sandy,
Aye.
Lisa,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Charlie,
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye as well. And we are adjourned until 6:30 when we'll open up the bond public hearing. Thank you. And for those online, stay online. They'll put you on mute for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll get started. All right, excellent. Thank you, everybody, for coming to our series of hearings. We're going to start out with a bond public hearing for our CTE Center, move on to our budget public hearing, and then have a school board meeting where the board will vote on each item to appear on the school warrant. Before we get started, I guess as we always do, I'd like us all to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess just so everyone knows what to expect, we're going to start off again with the bond hearing for the CTE Center. Ruben and the board will have a presentation. We'll talk about it, and we do want to hear from each of you here, if you have something to say, and I'll include our online audience as well. So this is a chance for you to learn about it, provide your feedback. We're certainly here to listen and answer questions. And I'll just ask that when you speak, you come up to microphones, your name and your town of residence, and you can say what, provide your input. They'll have people coming in.
Need more chairs.
So we'll give it another minute here to be sure everyone has a chair. And I think we should be good. So as everyone gets settled in, I guess I'll hand it over to Ruben to begin the CTE presentation.
All right, thank you all for coming this evening. We're gonna do a much shorter conversation or presentation about the proposed career and technical education addition that, as most of you came through the front doors over here, the proposed building would be right out there. So it would go from the building itself here all the way to the just about the parking lot. And we have some pictures of what it could look like. And certainly if you need to look at schematic designs or anything like that, we are at that stage with the architects. There would be 3 other stages if we were going to go further. So tonight we're going to talk about the warrant article, the project overview, a timeline or approximate timeline, the bond term, estimated tax impact, and estimated operational costs. So I will read this to you. This is the warrant article that has been approved by Bond Counsel and by the DRA, with some support from our attorneys to make sure that all the language was what it needed to be. So Article 2, this would be, because it's a bond, or we going for a bond, we would put this actually ahead of any of the other articles on the warrant, apart from the first one, which talks about the positions that are going to be elected. So shall the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District raise and appropriate the sum of $22,895,000 for the design, construction, and equipping of a new career and technical education center addition and renovation at Conant Middle High School. To authorize the acceptance of $16,046,000 of New Hampshire Regional Career and Technical Education, or CTE, funding from the New Hampshire Department of Education, DOE, and not from local taxes. To authorize the school board to apply for, obtain, accept, and expend any other federal, state, or other aid and or donations, if any, which may be available for said project, and comply with all laws applicable to said project. To authorize the issuance of not more than $6,849,000 of bonds or notes in compliance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33:1, as amended. To authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, sell, and deliver said bonds and notes and determine the rate of interest thereon and the maturity and other terms thereof, to further appropriate the additional sum of $171,225 for the first year payment on the bond, and to authorize the school board to take any other action in connection therewith or pass any other vote relative thereto. If the DOE CTE funding is less than $16,460,000, the appropriation in this article will be reduced by the difference between the funding anticipated, that $16,046,000, and the actual funding the district receives, and the project scope will be adjusted accordingly. And it's a note, couple notes actually underneath. This project has been approved for funding by the New Hampshire Department of Education. Pursuant to RSA 188E:10, the legislature shall fund between 50% but not more than 75% of the eligible cost of a DOE-approved CTE project. The district anticipates receiving 75% funding for eligible costs for the project, which would be estimated at $16,046,000. The district's financial obligation under this article is limited to the repayment of the bond amount authorized. 60% or 3/5 majority ballot vote is required to pass this. And later on tonight, after all of these hearings are complete, the board will go into a public session and they will vote on whether they recommend this or not. During this meeting right here, changes can be made during this hearing. We have some facility improvement goals, and you can read those up there. We want to provide active, enjoyable experiences for all community members by ensuring that these facilities and grounds promote safety and security. We want to ensure upkeep and improvement efforts are implemented to increase efficiency and effectiveness, and to create a greater sense of pride, community, and sense of belonging by properly maintaining and strategically improving the district's facilities and grounds. That's just, in general, what we want to do with our facilities. This is a picture of what the front could look like. It's just a rendering. The caption there is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take advantage of state funding. I can talk about the state funding a little bit in that I was at the Department of Education 2 days ago and spoke with the individuals who oversee CTE. One of the individuals, Jeff Beard, who's the one in charge of career and technical education at the Department of Education, indicated that he had just the day before had a conversation with our new governor, Kelly Ayotte, and that she was very interested in this project and wanted to hear more about specifically the Jaffrey Ringe project that was being proposed. I don't think it's a secret to anyone that among other educational initiatives that she is kind of focusing on, career and technical education is one that is high on her priority list and is certainly getting a lot of attention across the entire state. This is the last year of a 20-year funding cycle that the state has had for career and technical education. I will show you later on that all of the schools that have been funded, this will be the last of this funding approach. I'm actually on a committee right now at the state level to talk about what might happen in the future around career and technical education funding. One-time opportunity, we're up for it. We're the very last group. So this is just a list. Might be difficult to see for people who are here in the audience. Online, you probably have a better ability to do so. Nashua, Portsmouth, Keene, Conway, Berlin, Concord, Exeter, Manchester, Wolfboro, Littleton, Laconia, Derry, Somersworth, Salem, Dover, Rochester, Hudson, Newport. All of them were funded at 75% of allowable costs. We expect that that will be the case this time around. Since Region 14, which includes us, Conval, and Messinic, we are a center that shares with one another. Conval has decided not to move forward with a proposed project, and Messinic is not going to do what they were originally going to consider doing for their automotive. We are the group in Region 14 that is competing in a sense for these funds. Certainly, us being the only ones in this region doing that helps our chances to get that 75% funding. Milford is the other school district that is looking for further funding.
Yeah, and I just will, that has been a question that's come up, right? This funding is not guaranteed, and that's true, right? It's not guaranteed that we'll get this funding if we vote for it. But again, as Ruben showed, every single project that's been approved by the local community has been approved at that 75% level. I'll say previously when it was Milford, us, possibly Messinic and Conval putting our projects together, that number for that 75% state funding was a big number. I guess traditionally a little bit more than the state has funded in the past. Now that it's just us and Milford, that number is well within the bounds of what the state has budgeted in the past. So certainly we feel a lot better about our chances to get that. And specifically, I know Ruben mentioned, and I read in the newspaper the comments from Kelly Ayotte, though brief. She is prioritizing CTE funding, and these are the only two projects that are certainly on the docket immediately. So for those that are concerned, if we don't approve this, we won't. If we approve this, we won't get state funding. While it certainly isn't a guarantee, all signs point to yes on this project.
Just a little bit more story around that because we've been at this for a little bit of time. The original number that was going to be requested by the state was around 60 million. And the commissioner had a meeting with us and talked about the fact that that was going to be a tough sell for the legislature. And so even though it's a different legislature than what it was before, you never know what's going to happen, but still that would be quite a bit more than what they've done in the past. Understanding that in 2022, 2023, around that time frame, building costs also went up like 40%. So, you're talking about spending a lot more money anyway for products that they would have spent less years ago. Now, with that in mind, we were encouraged to collaborate a little bit more, look at our projects and see if there's anything that we could do to reduce or to refine the project. And we had, this has been a very collaborative process. And so we had a group of individuals from the community who took a look at the original ask, which was actually for 4 programs. There was a cosmetology component to this as well. It was decided that we would remove that from this, bringing it down to a 22 million plus project as opposed to a $28 million project. And then of course, Conval exiting from this because theirs was similar in scope of what we were doing, puts Milford and us in a nice space with one another. This is a slide just showing what we do currently offer: automotive at Messinic, manufacturing at Conval, business at Conval, computer programming, graphic design, photography, careers in education, and we have the construction trades. And we are proposing to add culinary, which is something that almost every center has across the entire state. We are actually the only group that really can't get our learners to be able to access that. Highly popular. And then public safety and security, which also would involve some health sciences, which around EMT. Conval, even though they are not going for a new center, they are still looking to work with us to add health sciences because we want our kids to have that. Otherwise, we'd be talking about that here as well. Nursing, OT, PT, etc. It's an important field to be able to expose our learners to. So they're committed to continuing to figure out a way to do that. I believe this is my last conversation with them. So we certainly want to increase the number of offerings in this region for all of our kids.
In construction trades.
Construction trades for certain, absolutely. That's where we would maintain that, improve it. Construction trades, by the way, is electrical, plumbing, masonry. You know, it's a variety of. It's not simply carpentry anymore. I say simply is there's nothing simple about carpentry, but it's a wide array of skills that we're looking at exposing our learners to and getting them possibly even to get internships in. This is just a sample, but it's a good sample of what is offered around the state. You can see that our region, Region 14, which we have 3 schools, Conant, Conval, and Messinic, we give our learners 8 offerings. That is woefully less than just about any other region in this entire state. So the next one that we were able to find, the Milford area, has 11, and they're looking to add some more. Places like Dover, who have partnered with Somersworth and Rochester, they have over 30 offerings. Seacoast School of Technology over in the Seacoast and Exeter, 12 very solid ones that they've had for a long time. Cheshire over in Keene has a variety. And we've been able to, part of the reason why we took cosmetology off was because we have been able to get some of our learners into cosmetology over at Keene. We have not been able to get them into the other areas such as culinary arts. So, and then traveling to Milford, we do send a learner or 2 over there for engineering right now. I mean, that's a haul. It's also a lot of traveling on in difficult conditions during the winter time, although this winter has been a little bit milder. So we're always concerned about that travel. Certainly, if we have the offerings here, we also don't pay for travel for our learners to have to go to these other places, which travel expenses are very pricey. Usually about 40 for a year, about $40,000 to $50,000 a run. Timeline, we started working on this, in 2022, 23, talking about it, getting it underway. January, we applied. Our application has changed a couple different times. I just gave them updated information a couple days ago. And then here we are at really March is going to be the vote for this. And then I would get an opportunity to go in front of the legislature in May or June and present our case to them if it passes in March. If not, then I would not have an opportunity to be in front of them. So we'll do that. And then we would find out in June at the latest of whether what we were going to get. And then we can start a process after that. So if we were to get all the funding that we were looking for, we'd take about another year, maybe not quite a year, to make sure all our planning is in place. And then construction would start the following year. And construction can happen pretty quickly. If you've been at other presentations, we've used the number 7 million. We're not proposing that anymore. We have firmer numbers, and I think very safe numbers, but 6,849,000. And while we can't guarantee interest rates and we don't have anything new in January, we're taking the ones prior to that. The structure of it all is going to likely be similar with the 5, 10, 15 years. Certainly, we have to make sure that our bond is going to before at least the life of anything that is going to be funded by that. And so, looking maybe more at a 10 or a 5, 10 certainly is going to give you the lowest interest rate, and perhaps be a little bit easier to handle from a tax rate standpoint year after year. And so while it fluctuates year after year a little bit within, $30, $40, $50, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, based upon, calculations, it averages out below to show that if you were to take a 5-year bond, it would have approximately a 466 a year for all those 5 years, addition to taxes on a $350,000 home, about 100 less than that in RINJ. And then a 10-year, you can see there the 250 and the 194, or the roughly 200, and then 15-year, 181 a year and about 140 a year. Yes,
I'm gonna go just checking to be sure.
on that last slide.
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay. And then, we were asked, what are some operational costs? Because that's not within a bond, right? So if you're adding programming, then yes, there's staff. If you're adding square footage, there's cleaning that needs to take place. If you're adding square footage, there's heat, electrical, water, sewage, all of that. And so, but also if you're adding programming, and we know that we can open these seats up to at least 25%, or if we're not filling the rest within our own population, we can, put it out we get revenue for anyone coming into our program. And so if we had 25% of our population, all our seats filled, then you'd get about $50,000 per course for that. So about $150,000 that would come back in as revenue to offset some of these. The EMT, public safety, security, it is possible, I'm giving you a worst case scenario here. It is possible that we would be able to do that from within our own, at least a portion of it within our own teaching population. Certainly culinary arts, you'd have to add a teacher for that. Supplies would be more for culinary arts. Some of those supplies, or much of those supplies, would be offset by revenue because you'd be actually selling a product both internally and with the community. So you might break even. Most likely you will. I think culinary arts sectors do tend to break even that way. Also, there is some federal funding that can be used in all of these startups. And then also, even after a couple of years, federal funding to deal with supplies and equipment and things of that nature. So that would not hit the tax rates. You would have to have some additional cleaning, given the square footage that we would be having, which, total square footage around 26,000 square feet. We estimate, after talking to the architects and looking at our trends and realizing what the materials are going to be used and the energy efficiency materials and so forth, about a $40,000 a year estimate additional for utilities. That's everything combined. And then having to have a halftime person during the day and in the evening to make sure that the place is cleaned properly. And that's the end of the presentation here. And
I know that was a lot of information there. And everyone probably has questions, specifically probably with the wording of that article, right? That's kind of confusing. Hoping to answer those questions, but I guess, John, you have a comment.
Well, one of the things that Ruben covered in the presentation back in November is that, and it's been mentioned several times, is that it's not only our enrolled students who would take advantage of this and benefit, and not only Messinic and Conval, but homeschool students and private school students, charter school students that would all have access to these facilities and be able to join in and take advantage of these courses. And then the other thing that, again, has been mentioned numerous times is that these would be, or the intent is these would be community facilities, open to the community on weekends, in the summer. And specifically, there would be efforts made to arrange security so that we can do that in a safe way.
Yeah, the idea of security would be to change it up from this building right here and to make sure there's another way to make it more accessible to the community. Also offering night classes. And we're gonna be dabbling with that anyway this year, in the construction trades. We're just putting that together right now. Because we do want an intergenerational educational setting here. We want to make sure that our kids are learning alongside of, with adults, with people who are retired, want to learn new things, be part of a community in the evening. If you have groups, to be able to utilize the facility. If we were going to take a longer presentation about this, be able to see what the internal construction would look like, would be to, especially the culinary arts area, would be to have it be able to open up so that large groups could access and have a free flow all the way through for gatherings, events, and then have it open up to a courtyard that would have an outside kitchen area as well, and seating, and a nice grassy area too, which would be right outside our library area, right out here. So it's not all about building. There's a courtyard area, yes. Well,
Yeah, Tom,
actually.
Yeah,
he's
could
the
you
one.
come
Yeah,
up to
I
the,
can't- I can't.
Is it microphone time?
yeah, well, I mean, I think we do have an online audience, right?
Mhm.
So I do like it to be informal, but we have people online, so in order for them to hear you.
Sure. My
state your
name's,
name and your town of,
I'm Tom
residence.
Alborn Sue. I live here in Jaffrey. I was the carpentry and the engineering teacher at Cambridge Ridge Latin High School. So I've taught in these kind of programs before. We did have a community restaurant called Cantabrigian in Cambridge, and it was a wonderful place. It was always full because the students cooked all the food, the students did all the serving, and it helped us not only to help us teach kids culinary, but it gave us a focus to teach kids practical skills. Like instead of just learning math, you learn algebra. Like you've all heard the question, when am I ever going to use this? Well, that was a real question. We taught the kids Excel. We taught the kids how to learn math through looking at business plans. We taught the kids how to do reading and writing through writing contracts, for example, business contracts. So it became a way to help us refocus a lot of the curriculum around more practical things. So it offers a benefit in many, many ways. And I said that a community restaurant is a cool thing. You know, it's a kind of thing where I would go just to bring friends, say the kids cook this. This is awesome. You know, and it was extremely successful. It always broke even. And we pretty much had a waiting list for dinner reservations on Friday and Saturday night, you know, for the student run restaurant. So I think it was a very successful project.
And I guess one thing I do want to mention that we've talked about at presentations in the past, again, we're trying to be brief so that we can hear from you. Was that, yeah, certainly we've talked a lot about the building here, but the real driver for this, as Ruben alluded to with the different programs, is opportunities for the kids, right? It's about providing these educational opportunities that are skills-based, right? We do hear a lot as school board members from our community of like what people want us to teach, what we should be doing in public schools. And what we hear a lot about is the trades, practical skills, jobs that prepare you for life in the real world. And that's exactly what CTE is. You know, and that does come with a building, and that does come with costs as well, in order to do it right. And I know we didn't touch on that much here, but I know certainly as we've talked about this as a board, that's the driver behind it, right? To creating those opportunities that our kids don't currently have, that we think our community wants based on, you know, what they tell us, and that they have in other parts of the state. And again, we're open for comments. So again, if you have a comment, please just, raise your hand, come on up, state your name.
Hi, thank you. John Frederick, Town of Jaffrey. I'm just curious, the initial payment there is extremely low. Why is that?
I think Carrie, I think it's like an interest-only payment, and I think Carrie can
Okay,
probably confirm that.
It is, it's an interest-only payment, which is why the other slide was shown to show what the average tax rate impact would be per
for a
town
household,
for
right?
after that, because the first year is an interest-only payment, and that was provided to us by the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank.
Okay. Well, I think in fairness to the taxpayers, portraying a tax rate of 15 for Jaffrey and 12 for Ringe is deceptive here. You know, because your actual payment, if you're doing a 10-year note, you're
It's gonna be
talking,
more.
right?
The
Yeah,
pay-
you're going to be in the neighborhood of 900,000 per year on the payments, including interest. So you're going to be roughly, for Jaffrey, it would be 85 cents. You know, and I would think that you'd want to portray that in the article. I know the article itself, you only have to talk about the initial payment
Right.
to get this to go, but for full transparency, I would like to see what the impact is. So, you know, because that 15 cents just doesn't add up, and
Yeah, yeah.
you know, it's going to be roughly 85 cents for Jaffrey, you know, and allow the voters to digest that.
Yeah.
That's just a recommendation.
Yeah, no, I do agree, and maybe we should talk about, I don't know whether we'll need to decide tonight. I guess we probably will, right, as we discuss this afterwards about whether we could include some language in there in the comments about, you know, estimated tax impact for the out years, because we certainly know it, right? We're not trying to hide it. We showed you on the slides about what it's gonna be. I will say that kind of a complexity of that is like, it will change based on interest rate and bond term, right? It's an estimate. But I guess we can provide.
What we've done in the past with this sort of thing, with this matter, and I think this is what we talked about already, was that while we wouldn't necessarily put it here, or typically, we would, we do have a mailing that goes out to everyone, and to make sure that we show what subsequent years would likely look like. And so providing that information out to everyone in advance is important. We've done that with other.
Yeah, I don't know what legally we can have on the ballot.
My point is that it can't be on the ballot. It can be certainly explained within the mailing that we do, talking about all the warrant articles.
We also have a voting guide.
That's what I mean.
Mailed to every
And other
resident, so-
mailings as well, but the voter guide that goes out would have that information. That's what we've done in the past.
Yeah, because I do agree that is deceptive, and it's not the intent, right? We do want everyone to understand what it is, and I wouldn't. Yeah, we'll have to figure out the best way to do that.
$186, $194 a year. That is accurate. And the 251 average, that is the accurate number.
Those are accurate.
Well, they're estimates.
They're estimates based upon the rates that are there.
Yeah, Roberta.
Roberta Acer Renge. I'm confused. You said that DOE removed fire and fire science. And then you had it as a teaching position for fire EMT. So is it something that you're going to be able to do that wouldn't necessarily be? I'm confused. So is it in or is it out?
Yeah, fire science isn't part of this. That would be a more expensive approach to doing things. They do not. EMT, which is often in health sciences, can also be in public safety and security. Public safety and security is a broad area that, you know, having to do with, it's very science and social studies based. But we would not be specifically having the fire science, which is what we did originally have out there that we were going to do. The Department of Education would not support that.
Oh, yeah. Well, with the shortage of firefighters, I can't imagine why they wouldn't be encouraging it.
Yeah,
it's just-
the information we were provided, this is what they said, was that many communities, or perhaps even most communities was the language they used, have volunteer firefighters, and that their focus was to have career and technical education that was going to have as an outcome possible certifications or job opportunities. And so they felt it was a little bit, you know, too far removed from that. Also concerned with the age of our learners. Maybe they're not all physically built yet to handle a lot of the heavy equipment. And then also it really would serve a smaller group of individuals. So they wanted programming that was going to teach, you know, 16 to 18 to 20 individuals at a time, not 4 or 5.
And then the second is, you only listed that there'd be possibly 2 teaching positions for how many course offerings?
They would typically have 4 offerings each, at a time.
Okay. And as far as putting the second year's impact, you have done it in the past. It's your warrant. I think you can put on it what you want. And that means you can put a second line. It's like it's been on there before. I know, because there was a discussion about that. It only showed the interest only, which was a really small payment. And, everybody goes, what's this going to cost next year? So, yeah, I believe that you can, regardless of what DRA says, you print the ballots, they're yours.
Thank you, Roberta. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
David Chamberlain, Jaffrey. Could you tell me what the date of the survey, the data for the survey was and how long ago that was done? And have you done a more recent survey?
So you're
For
talking
the students,
about
for the students,
the
the
students.
interest in the classes, because I believe at a previous meeting, it was like a 3 or 4 year old information. So has that been redone to make sure there still is the interest?
We have not done another survey. I don't think it's that old, but I think it was done within months prior to, it was last year. It's fairly recent. Yeah.
I am Corey McCagg in Jaffrey. I just sort of wanted to get some clarity. When you were talking about cost of materials, I think there was something about they've gone up 40% in the last year.
Yeah, so after COVID, inflation happened, certainly, and a lot of things got more expensive. So when talking with our architect, as we were to, and we consulted with other individuals as well in the construction fields around how to price this, and what type of, costs we need to include, I guess you could assume from year to year in this project, this kind of 2-year time frame that we have. We had looked at the trends and had been that in around 2022 to 2023, projects construction costs had gone up about 40%. This year, I believe they've actually gone down or stayed the same. There has been very little movement in that, but when I say gone down, I don't even mean a percent, but they're kind of staying even right now. And we would expect that if it were going to be similar to what was prior to that big boom, that 3 to 4, I think we have, a couple years of 5% in there, would be enough.
Okay. I would assume it'll be going back up again at one.
Good.
Yes. Yeah, please.
Since I'm sitting here, do I have to get up there?
Yeah, we're gonna make you get up, Jed.
I do. I'm Barbara
excuse me, I'm
Dancer in Jaffrey. I have a couple of questions. I'm really not sort of this oriented. I'm an artist, but the $200 taxes per year, is that no matter what you owe? Is it just across the board equal for everybody?
No,
No.
what we tried to do there is provide, for a $350,000 home, right? So, sometimes we do it $100,000 per $1,000. There's a whole bunch of ways we do it.
Yeah.
We think it's, using $350,000 is a number that people can work with. So based on that, obviously, if it was a $700,000 home, it would be twice that. So it
Okay.
all depends on the valuation of your property.
Okay.
And again, I think that, and Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but right, because of our, district agreement, that Jaffrey Ringe split could change by year. It's
The
not-
apportionment formula,
The
right.
apportion will change, like, so this year's apportionment formula is heavier towards Jaffrey. If that changed, then the payments could shift. Is that correct, Carrie?
Right, so the apportionment formula is based on property values and on student population, attendance within a district. And so the formula is split 50-50 based on how those percentages are allocated by town. So every year that's recalculated and the percentages are combined to determine how the assessment is apportioned between the towns.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, the 6,046,000, is that set in concrete? In other words, we will not give out more than that money.
Yeah, that is the amount of money that we're seeking a bond for. So again, that's been a question that we've gotten, like, how much does this cost the taxpayer?
Okay.
That's your answer there. We
So-
can't seek a bond for any more than that. So as far as taxpayer liability is concerned, right, that's the bond amount. I guess what we could add to that is, right, the cost of the bond, I think. We can seek a bond for that 6,849,000, depending on the term of that, right, there's gonna be added costs as
Yeah.
shown
Yes.
there, correct?
Yeah.
The interest.
I think another thing to consider and something that we are going to actively do is, should this pass, we are going to actively seek donors to help pay, for this. So for instance, if there's a company out there that wants to donate a room, or wants to, donate materials, or wants to be a part of this and have their name put on, the facility in a certain way, for a donation of sorts that would offset this, we're going to give people the opportunity to do so. People, companies, organizations, etc., to be a part of this in a bigger way, which would then reduce.
As you can tell, I kind of like to have sort of solid figures, and I'm just wondering if the state comes in with less money, considerably less. Do you just reduce what you're building, or do we start over with a conversation with the public?
We would likely, well, at that point in time, we would have more conversation with the public to let people know,
And
get some
would we
ideas,
revote? Would
but,
we
revote? No, because the warrant would state that if that were to take place, we would look at a project scope.
And I
No,
guess
reduce
yeah,
this.
and again, that would be kind of a board decision and discussion, right? What we wanted to avoid was, like, let's say the state gives us 1 penny less than what's on here, the whole project scrap. Obviously, I don't think anybody would want that. Nobody would want to
Right,
go back to a
right.
vote, because the state gave us $2 less than we had on the warrant article. So we spent a lot of time. If anybody's tuned into other meetings, I mean, we spent hours
Yeah.
talking
been-
about this.
we've been
However, if
advocating-
it's, if it's a number that is half, right? To me, that's a board discussion with the community on, how we want to proceed. Certainly, we would have the authority to seek that bond, but speaking for myself, and I know the other board members can chime in as well, a significant reduction in scope would not be just a board decision, as it's been from the beginning, right? It's going to be a community conversation on how we proceed, because we certainly would not want to move forward with something that wasn't supported by the community. So that would,
Well, I
essentially
think-
kick it back to us.
I thank you for clarification.
Yeah.
My only concern is that of the 256 towns in the state, we're number 6 highest taxes. There are only 5 towns that have slightly higher taxes. We're number 6 out of 256, and I just hate to see our taxes go up
Yeah.
because they're very high. But thank you so much.
Jed?
Jed Brummer, Ringe. Growing up, lived in East Jaffrey, but anyway, interesting forum. I'm surprised that we haven't heard from more people. I suspect that most people are for this project, even though it's going to be an increase to our taxes. And as this young lady just expressed, our taxes are high because the way we fund education in this state, which is unequal. Why do rich towns pay $5-6 per thousand, and we're paying 20-some, to Claremont paying $40 per thousand? My feeling is that this project has been well thought out. We have a school system that is promoting education for those kids that are going to help not only their kids, but even the next generation, we're behind in the state as to vocational education. And we need that opportunity, even though it might mean a couple $100 extra. It's looking at it. Yes, nobody wants to spend any extra because we have high property taxes, but it's an investment in our future, our kids, and that's my goddamn phone. Yeah, that's a cricket. Yeah.
Serious.
So if somebody's, it's probably my wife, but, John, will you take care of that? Just smash it. Yeah. I hope that we can come together, realize the work that our school committee does in our administration, because they know the sentiments of the populace about property taxes, and they're under the gun every year. This is a one-at-a-time opportunity to get 75% funded and create a better community for our future. Damn.
Thanks, Dave. We have a comment online. Yeah, again, if you could put them through, and again, whoever you're online, please state your name and your town of residence, and you can have the floor.
Sorry.
Yep, okay. So I guess we'll continue to keep the floor open here if there's any more comments. And I know certainly we will get into, oh, okay.
I was hoping somebody else would be in between me and Jed, but that's a hard act to follow.
Sit down, Frank.
Your bond is for
I know
six.
everyone knows who you are.
Oh, yeah, I'm Frank Sterling from Jaffrey.
Thanks.
Your bond amount is $6.9 million. Total project's 22 point something. How do you anticipate getting the 16 million from the state, or whatever 75% they give you? How does that come down to you?
Like what's the payment schedule,
Yeah.
or
How do you get it?
Is that how you're specifically asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. First of all, from the beginning, it's us, we approve it. We go, we say our community has approved this. The Department of Ed has approved this. They're putting it forward. It's certainly, again, it's something that the governor is pushing as well, career and technical education. No other group has ever gotten anything less than the 75 of allowable costs, 75%. We think that with the projects that are going out there, we have an extraordinarily good shot at getting that 75. I understand what he's really asking, 75%. So then how it comes to us, so we start this project, we would get invoiced on a monthly basis. We will provide those invoices to the department, and they would then give us the money as it goes along. So it's not we're going to reimburse you sort of thing. It's going to be paid up front. So all the way until it's paid for.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, that was my question, because that's how you get the money, but you're still paying interest on the bond in the meantime. So you're probably a year away from having to make a payment you would be making payments on the bond as soon as you get it. The other thing I want to remind everybody is that this is not a standalone increase to your tax rate of 85 cents or more when you get it. when you stick around for the next hearing, which is the budget hearing, they're projecting $3.85 for Jaffrey and $3 and something for Ringe. So add that to the 85 cents. Now we're over $4. This is 4 years out of the 3 years out of the last 4. Then we've had a multi-dollar, $3 or more increase in the tax rate to pay for the schools.
Tom?
I'd like to clarify something that, because Frank was correct in that, but given the inflation rate that, let's call it 3%, whatever you want to call it, but getting a 3% increase in the school budget is actually level funding because of the cost of electricity and everything else goes up. And so if you should expect the school budget to increase at least by the inflation rate every year, if you flat funded it, that's actually a cut. And so I would say, and when we look at the budget numbers, that a 3% increase is really flat funding. Don't think of it as an increase. That's because it's not.
Any other comments from people online or here in the audience? Or I guess on the board?
Jim Webster, Jaffrey. School teacher for about close to 40 years. What I understand here is that there's some children in our community who are not being served. And we also need people to come into our world and maintain it and build it up. I'm entirely in favor of the project.
Thank you. And I think if you're present for some of the other longer presentations, we did talk about how, not only to enable our kids to get skills and, jobs, but jobs that are available and needed in this community, right? Kids that come to Conant, gain a skill, and then are able to start a business and use those skills to benefit the community. And that's really, we have 50 slides on this. We spared you from that.
Oh, I was just going to go into that.
Yeah, no, I know you'd like to, but
I get excited about this.
Certainly that is, and I'm glad that you appreciate that. That is really, what we're thinking of here. John?
So while we're waiting for more public comments, if they come out, please, they're welcome. But we are very aware of property taxes. We're all taxpayers too. And not only that, we hear from people who are really under pressure from these rising property taxes. We live in a great state. State's got a lot going for it, but it's a state that chooses to fund education through property taxes. And when you go through a period of inflation, like we just went through, you're going to get hit hard by it. And Ruben mentioned the 40% construction cost increases. Other things went up too. Salaries went up. We all voted last year to approve a teacher's contract, and that, it's a multi-year contract. And a lot of this that you're seeing in this year's budget is, related to the decisions we all made. And they were good decisions. We would have, lost teachers otherwise. But the thing I want to mention about this project is that communities across the state have beautiful facilities that they've constructed in the past 20 years using this program. And our kids deserve the same. They deserve access, they deserve opportunities. And to tell you the truth, we also deserve to have schools we can be proud of and that will attract families who want to move in here and work in some of our good industries. So that's the other side of it.
It's an opportunity for innovation. When you get an opportunity to innovate and think about the future, it is wise for communities to do that. Staying static is, I think, similar to what was stated before, is moving back. You want, in New Hampshire, the way things are right now, and if they continue to be funded the way, if education in general is continued to be funded the way that it is, taxes are never going to go down. They're always going to go up. The way to help support that within the community is by building your communities, building them stronger, bringing people in, bringing industry in and so forth, and having a much stronger tax base. And communities that have done that in New Hampshire are doing very well. And that can happen here too. We have amazing people, amazing skill sets in these communities. Our kids are phenomenal. They deserve the opportunities that exist in so many other places. And they deserve to be part of a community that says, you know what, your education matters. Those expectations, along with higher expectations within the school, within high expectations within families and so forth, are fundamental to our kids being strong, not just within the trades, but in anything that they pursue. And let's be honest, this is not just about a pipeline for a job. This is about building, CTE is about building creativity, communication, collaboration, skill sets, critical thinking that are good for their 21st century and beyond. Most individuals are not going to work in the same job going forward that they start off with. They're going to need to have those skills to adapt and have transferable skills that are going to allow them to be successful in other types of jobs. And this type of learning helps with that. It mixes theory and practice together and blends it, and that's going to be critical for their future. It's you know what, it's nice for the now too, for everyone else to experience.
And I guess to make the connection, I think we're having the wrestling team getting started, some tumbling team getting started back here. To make the connection between like the taxes, which again, we're acutely aware of, and this project, this board is, again, very aware of that, lives it. So we do have to be strategic when we move forward with certain projects, right? When we do have an opportunity to get 75% state funding, that is something that, you know, we should at the very least consider. And to me, give the voters a chance to vote on that, because it's not coming back. We're not, if that were not available, I can guarantee you that this board would not be sitting here recommending a $23 million bond for this center, right? It just wouldn't happen. We know that the community can't afford that. We know that it's difficult to afford this, but if you look at the value for what you're getting in this, I think, you know, we'll vote on it later, but I think most members of this board have seen how this project has been developed. We see that it's a good value for the community, and we know that it's not coming back. Ultimately, it will be up to the voters, right? But really, that's how we think about it. This 75% state funding is a chance for us to significantly advance what we're doing here, significantly advance learning, you know, at a fraction of the cost to taxpayers. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, come on up.
I am probably about to put a little something out, but anyway, I heard you mention charter schools and private schools coming here. And I'm wondering, when you're soliciting donations, if they couldn't put some money back into our system, since that money is being taken away, I think. So if there's any way to have them partake in the hard part as well as the joy of it. Thank you.
No, I think you bring up a good point, and we'll talk more about that during the budget conversation, but you're right. You'll hear it again. We are going to put in our budget $100,000 for special education services to charter schools in nearby communities. And we own that. And that's going to continue to grow. That's up like 85,000 more from what it was last year. That's only going to increase. The decisions that have been made within the state about choice, I love choice. I think choice is fantastic. I think it's a great concept. How it's being done is fiscally irresponsible, and that's unfortunate. It's chasing an ideology rather than chasing really a better education for all individuals. And certainly, it's not helping any taxpayer.
That's
Go ahead, Lisa.
a lot of this whole process began with a very unfortunate aspect of our lives. Right around just after like COVID's finishing and the stress on everybody is unbelievable. The voters decided to not vote for our operating budget. And we had to go to a default budget, which cut a massive chunk of funding. And this is just 2 years ago, I think. And we sat, I think we were in this room. Yeah, we were in this room after that vote, kind of looking at each other, so discouraged, because this is actually a really, really hard job. And getting through that budget season of 4 months, 5 months, and coming to that realization of what had to be cut and what had to be decided. And once we kind of made those decisions, we looked at each other and said, well, what do people want? Like, what else can we do? What is it that we can do to make this more viable? And it comes to mind because of somebody who just said, when was the last survey you did? So we had done surveys, done a million surveys during COVID. Whew, so many surveys. But many of the things that came out that we looked at was a historical record of where are our wait lists? Where are our waiting kids? And there were 2 areas that we saw that. One was in our preschool. Our preschool at the time, and I will probably get the numbers wrong, but our preschool at the time for ages had a wait list where kids in Ringe could not get into the school to the preschool. And so we said, well, we have this COVID money, the ESSER funds. How about if we double our preschool and get rid of the wait list altogether? And we did that within months. That was completed. And every kid was taken off the wait list. That's by that September. And we haven't had a wait list since then. Is that correct? And we've been full. I should say that too.
For 4-year-olds, yeah.
Full, and we did that for 4-year-olds. Kids coming right in, which will help us with retention, having kids in the system, getting those services right off the bat. It helps. I mean, it's just invaluable. All of us know preschool and into kindergarten is invaluable. So we did that immediately with immediate effect, with immediate viewing of this is the benefit that we're seeing with this. The second place that we saw waitlists was the CTE program. And it was at the time, if you remember, when colleges started floundering and people were wondering, where is this money going and why am I coming out without a job? Why am I paying all this money and the student loans are here and I can't get a job? Now, we have no trade schools within walking distance. We have no trade schools within a 20-minute drive at all. And that I have 5 kids, and believe me, this is a trial. Like this was a very hard thing to have, to not have any opportunity for them to get certification other than the wider academic world and academia. And CTE was something that people in our area are crying out for, not just the kids though, and not just the parents, the businesses were coming to us saying, we need trained people. We will help train your kids. We will help you do this. This was in complete collaboration, which is why when we say donors, we're not just blowing smoke. We believe there are people out there that really want to help us do this. We just can't put it on warrant articles right now. Okay. We have this, the state has to see that the town wants to do this. The town has to see the state has to. The businesses have to see that everybody's wanting to do this. Okay. So those 2 areas were the big ones, and the timing of this 20-year opportunity was right then. We said, okay, so now we need to put everything into the CTE. We did the preschool. That had great success. Now we have to fight for the CTE program. And this is 2 years now. We've been fighting for this so far. None of this is new for us sitting here. We've been working on this for 2 years, and it's not over. But please know that surveys aside, we are watching data like a hawk because we live here. We want this for our kids. We want this for us. So.
And that preschool investment, by the way, is researched to be, although a long-term investment, to show at least 100% return in your investment down the line. In some states, it's a lot more than that. New Hampshire, because of how we do the business, it's more like for every dollar you get an extra $1 back, so $2 in a sense. So from a financial standpoint.
Elizabeth Webster, Jaffrey. I was reading with those 4-year-olds yesterday. Good job. I do not have children in this school system. I, at my age, am unlikely to have children in this school system. However, I endorse this as an investment in the town and in the region. I think that having young people be enthusiastic about where they live, wanting to stay here, wanting to raise their families here, that will do a lot for the tax base. I feel the same way about vouchers. But I don't like the hit on my tax bill, but I still think this is a really good idea.
Jane Reese Jaffrey, what she said. I actually watched the very long presentation that you guys did last November. What an impressive amount of work you've all done. Thank you for that. I wholly support this project. I think there are so many good reasons that everyone has articulated for it to go forward, and I hope it does. Thank you.
And if you haven't seen that long presentation, you can view it online.
I don't know if it's been mentioned earlier before I came, but even though this is free for homeschoolers, charter school, heritage school, whatnot, it's also tuition based on schools like Conval and Messina. They're paying $3,000 or $4,000. There's some grants to offset that to help their school districts. But if this can be successful, Votech school, we can attract probably even more students tuition based to help offset the costs. Right?
Things are going toward choice.
Yeah.
Right now. And so I would expect that that would also extend more to just public schools in general. We'll see what transpires over the next couple of years. And we've been building over the last 10 years a system here to that is now starting to take some speed in a good direction.
Thanks to your leadership. Good job.
Thanks to the community. Really,
And
really the community.
Yeah.
The community's support is significant, and we need better results. Those results will come. I want to promise that. I believe it will happen. Because the systems are there now, and I'm excited. So we've felt that this board has been forward thinking the entire time. We have felt for a long time that the direction was going to be more like a magnet type of school, that choice was going to take place, and that we needed to have the infrastructure and the facilities with what we can afford to make us a place where people do want to come, where funds, if it's going to be a voucher system of some sort, if that remains in here, there are some states that are going away from that, that would be something that would be used to our school, and so we want to attract other people. We have a great system here that is doing some wonderful things.
And I'll say the other side, right, of that, that people have expressed concern at the other meeting is like, if these towns are going to be investing the money, like, are we guaranteed like that our students will access it as opposed to scenic students or Conval? And the way our agreement that was recently approved again is worded is that, that Jaffrey and Ringe students would be guaranteed at least 75% of the seats. So, right, we are investing the money, although we are part of a district. Our investment would be primarily for Jaffrey and Ringe students. To the 75% level at least.
Well, also, if we were not to have our students fill them at the 75% level, we can then open those up out, and then we do get tuition from both the sending school and the state.
Jim Kreitzer, Ringe, New Hampshire. I have a question for the board. I have not heard what the enrollment forecast is.
The total enrollment for the district, or are you talking about
No, just
For
for
the
this
program?
project?
Yeah, we have those. That other presentation, there's a slide. Do you have the full presentation?
See
We
what,
did, it was in the other presentation, as far as like how many classes and how many seats. Yeah, we do have a slide on that, so hopefully Ruben can bring it up right now and then we can discuss it. I think that's, yeah, that's it.
yeah, let me just,
Okay, so this, if I have this correct, this projects how many seats you'd have in the facility.
Mhm.
Correct?
Mhm.
So what's your projected fill rate?
well, I think our fill rate in culinary arts will be our full 75% of those. That our survey data would suggest that. EMTs, I believe that our fill rate will be 75% of that. And construction trades, we are already hitting that. I would expect that to increase, especially if we have better facilities and more offerings. And then public safety and security. I would think that we'd be within 50 to 75% on that one. And we'd probably be putting out some openings to other schools.
Round number, 300?
Well, if we have 54 seats, well, you mean during a year?
Year or semester.
Or a semester?
54 times 3.
Yeah, so you're talking about a couple hundred, per semester.
Okay. The numbers I see up there are approximately 300.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Ken Campbell, Jaffrey. I'm excited about this proposal and I commend the board and the administration for their work in developing it. I think construction trades are a very popular occupation around here and it's needed. We have a housing crisis. We want to increase housing. And culinary arts, I'm aware of the current apparent lack of trained people. Restaurant locally had to take more than a year to find somebody to staff them up. And for EMTs, my son was an EMT, is now a part-time firefighter and an acupuncturist. And those are things that people can do part-time, full-time. And I think it's an excellent opportunity for the youth of Jaffrey and for the future of Jaffrey. Thank you.
Sorry, I talk too much, but I did want to share a personal story. I told you I was a carpentry teacher, but I was also a physics teacher. And a couple of years ago, maybe 20, the Annenberg Foundation did a study where they took the graduates of Harvard University and a bunch of other universities. They handed them a battery, a light bulb, and a wire. And they said, you light the light bulb. The kids could talk about it, but they couldn't 80% of the kids could not light the light bulb. They couldn't bend the wire, touch the terminals of the battery, and make the bulb go on because they were taught from books. And they were not taught to do anything. And so I see this partly as a CTE project, and I know you guys see it the same way, but it's partly to bring back a lot of resources on hands-on education that we lost over the last 20 years when manufacturing was somehow downplayed and send all the kids to college, blah, blah, blah. We lost the ability to connect the real world to what we teach kids. And so the program I used to teach in Cambridge, I took the carpentry shop because there's way more physics in a carpentry shop than there ever was in a book. And I've written 3 physics books, I know. I started with carpentry kids, but by the 3 years into that, I had most of the kids in the school. We want to learn how to make things. We want to learn how to use tools. We want to learn how to fix what's broken. That's part of what we want to add back, that this will allow us to do. Once we have the facilities, and you need the tools, you can use it to enrich education in many, many subjects, not just the construction trades. So I see this as a very broader attempt, or not attempt, it's a way to bring back practical learning into our schools, because a lot of our schools lack the facilities now to do things like that. So thank you.
True. David Chamberlain, Jaffrey again. I just want to clarify those numbers that you said. My understanding, I think the enrollment for the total middle school and high school this year is about 455 students. Is that correct?
It's closer to 600 for the middle school and high school.
It is. Okay. So you're saying half of the school or half of the high school is going to be enrolled in these classes, 300 students a year. Is that what I heard that you just told this gentleman, that we're going to go through the CTE program a year?
Oh, I said 200.
Okay. Or 200. So you're
I think
anticipating
capacity would be around 300, right? But we have percentages that are going to other schools. And so I'm talking about, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can I just clarify that?
Yeah.
For instance, excuse me, I have a daughter who took the CTE program at Conval, the digital photography program. She did not go through the entire program. She took a 1-year class there and she got college credit for it, which now that she's applying for colleges, that appears on her transcript. So she would count as a student, even though she wasn't graduating from the CTE program. She took one class.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think most of these programs have 3 classes, or I think it varies, but
It varies, but 4, yeah.
3 or 4.
So as we kind of come, I mean, more people can ask the board chair to come up and speak and so forth, but as we kind of look to wrap this section up at this point in time, this is just what was put online, flyover, our architects put together, possible way of what the, front of it would look. On your left, you'd have the Culinary Arts Center. Right here, we'd be going around the space where the public safety and security and EMT section would be. Coming around to this side right here, this would be the outside portion of the construction trades, but all that area, which would be flush with the cafeteria here, kind of a 1.5 story section would be that. And then over here, this is on top of the culinary arts area where you'd have a greenhouse. And so you would be looking at farm to table, basically growing your food and then doing it underneath. You'd also add horticulture down the road if you wanted to. And then this is the outside courtyard. This area is an area for a community, for the kids, for whatever the usage. Of course, there's an outside kitchen area that could be done for catering in the evening for community functions if need be, and then a grassy area right here for recreation, for sitting outside, for outdoor learning, what have you.
Are there any more questions or comments from the audience here?
Tom Coney's from Ringe. I know you guys have spent a lot of time on it. I've been to some of these before, as you're aware. A lot of the information I see up here is pretty much the same as I saw the original presentation. I'm going to mirror what John said here. I think there's really a lot of gray area and unknowns about what the true financial impact is going to be. And like he said, to present 12 and 15 cents is kind of an illusion. So I think there's also a lot of other questions that are brought up. I know Conval pulled out of this submission for a number of pretty valid reasons. There's a lot of unknowns financially. From a special education funding standpoint, from this type of program funding, the average has been around 50%. That's what I've been told, but like I say, I'm only hearing pieces. You guys are the ones that are connected. The voucher program is going to expand, I'm quite sure. I think you'll agree with me, Ruben. And I think the population base may change up or down as a result of that. But I think in the end, I'm a data person. I just got done funding part of Jaffrey's giant tax bill just the other day. And I guess it's difficult for me to say, being a product of a regional vocational school many, many, many years ago, this is a very tough sell. And as a taxpayer, I'm very concerned about how it's going to impact just this project, never mind your operating budget, which is going to be the next agenda. And so I just got to say it's a very tough sell, and I have concerns about it, even though I'm a product of this and I believe in it. Thank you.
And I do appreciate that. I guess what we have tried to do is lay out, because we've heard that question, right? What is the cost? So what we attempted to do today is show the cost of the bond, show what the state would be contributing, and also an estimate of the operations costs, right? Which were all detailed in that program. So I think as someone that's been intimately involved with this project the whole time, right? We're not trying to hide anything, right? What the data that you see there is what we know. Are there unknowns? Absolutely. All those questions. Are there unknowns about how, the population of the state's going to go, and how school funding's going to be done? Special ed. Absolutely. There's a lot of unknowns there. These facts here that you see on this Warren article are knowns, or very high confidence estimates that we know today. And we feel confident enough that this is a great opportunity for our kids. So there'll always be unknowns, I think. And we've tried to limit that, present a clear story. And I think there's always going to be questions, but yeah, we'll have another question.
Hi, I'm Carl Querforth from Jaffrey. We all talk about the cost of building this thing, but no one's talking about the cost of not doing it. And I know that's really hard to propose and to figure out, but just watching these kids walk through here and thinking, you got to tell these kids, no, you're not worth it. And it just feels wrong to me that we can't afford to help these kids with a project that's so well thought out. So thank you.
And I'll speak to that. This is my own opinion. The cost to not go forward and innovate and create and progress to a community, those costs are unknown, but they're going to be high. And the cost of staying static is expensive. The cost of a community not communicating to its future the importance of them and their learning is enormous. Strong communities come together and value education. They talk about how they value education. We get together and we certainly have to talk about finances and taxes. That's all very important. It's necessary. We need to do it at multiple levels. This community can be so much stronger than what it is. Its future could be so much brighter, but it is only going to be if it communicates and embraces all individuals and communicates that their lives are important, that their future is important, that they're also acknowledge that the future that our kids are going to experience is far different than anything we experienced growing up. And any education we experience, it is rapidly changing, and we need to be able to move and mobilize with the times. And as John, you stated, I mean, I grew up on the seacoast. I know what the kids there, I taught over there as well. I know what they had access to. Our kids deserve to have access to these programs and to nice facilities and reason, we don't need the Taj Mahal, but resources that the majority of the rest of this state have access to. Our kids need that. Our community needs that. And it's an opportunity, I believe, if we take this opportunity to promote a much more intergenerational community and experience in these towns, which we need to do, and not have this group and this group and this group and be segmented like that or be in silos. This is something that can be more powerful than simply career and technical education.
One more comment. This is, people know who I am. I'm the fire chief here in Jaffrey. I urge you, whether this project gets approved or whether it doesn't, to whether the state tells you that there's no need for fire science programs in the state of New Hampshire, I can tell you that's not true. Okay.
I agree with you.
My understanding, there was seven students in this school that wanted to take a fire science program last year and
That
they
is
couldn't
true.
get into it.
You wanted it.
So we want to help you in any way we can to do that.
Mhm.
But I highly encourage you, again, whether this project gets approved or doesn't, that we look at doing some type of program to be able to support that.
Mhm.
The average age of my top responders in the Jaffrey Fire Department is 55 years old. So the young generation is, like, a lot of things are not stepping up to do this, but if we can provide them with the tools they need. I went to trade school. I'm an electrician by trade, worked myself up to be fire chief just by taking classes and stuff like that. So I just, again, highly, recommend that whatever can be done to help that program, no matter what happens with the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
The way we've worked to design the program is so that the spaces are flexible, right? So this is gonna be a building that's built, but it's gonna be around, for generations, hopefully, right? And it may not always be, we're trying to make it so that it is flexible, but the fact is Rubens, if we went forward with this project to the state with fire science on it, we wouldn't get that money for it. So essentially but I know that's our intent is, and I've been there with the conversations with the architects, right? That we need to build this space as flexible as possible, so that if our community's needs do change, we'll be able to adapt that in the future for, as little money as possible. So, no, we are thinking that way.
And we certainly hope to have the building available for evening classes. So even if these are classes that we can't offer during the daytime, that perhaps the community can come together and help us run them in the evening if there's a need.
Any more comments or questions for anybody online or in the room? Board members?
Well done, call it a night.
I wish.
Not yet.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'd like to have, I guess, a board discussion about any changes to the wording here. I do tend to agree that, some language to increase the kind of transparency of the costs is a good idea. Kind of any perception, right, of
Right, so
kind of us trying to be misleading, that's not what we want. It could be interpreted that way, and people should know, what they're voting for. I don't know what your opinion is.
no, I mean, it does state for FY 26, but I do understand the concern. We do have the flexibility to modify language on the warrant article as long as it doesn't change the intent or the dollar amount.
Okay.
So I would just run it by legal counsel to and the DRA to make sure we were in good order with adding something
Yeah.
about future tax impacts on it.
Yeah, we wanted, I don't know that we need to.
So if the board wants me to pursue that, I will definitely pursue that.
Do we have time before it has to be, like, is there a final date for it being set for the town?
Oh, yes. Well, for the posting, it has to be posted, yes. So after tonight, after this ends, you're gonna recommend or not recommend moving forward with the warrant article, you're gonna recommend it. So I can make minor language changes.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Or just
Good.
wordsmithing, right, but
Okay.
Yeah.
I was told that already, that wouldn't be an issue to.
I don't know whether it was a bond article. I don't think it was. I think it was on a teacher contract that you had second year's cost.
We do on teacher contracts for
on teacher
individuals. We typically do that, yes. So, that's within the bond warrant article, not at the end. So this is just providing an estimated tax impact at the end of it, I believe is where the discussion has been.
An explanation about something
Yeah.
that had, it wasn't a teacher's contract, but it was something where it was gonna change. Oh, it was some, it was a proposed bond that we didn't do.
It may have been, yep, yeah.
So we'll make sure that. You know, we'll vote on this in the final meeting there, but I think if we have the flexibility to include some clearer language as far as the tax impact in the out years, I think. We should do that. And I'm just looking at the other board members to see if anybody's disagreeing. Nope, I don't think they would. Excellent. So I guess before I'll open it up one more time. So the plan is now to, there's no more comments, to adjourn the bond hearing. Maybe take like a 5-minute break, bio break or whatever, in return for the budget hearing. So if somebody could make a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Christine.
A second.
Thank you, Lisa. Sandy,
Aye.
Lisa,
Yeah.
John,
Aye.
Christine,
Yes.
me, yes. Carly abstains. And we'll adjourn for like, let's say until 8:10. I hope that's okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you for waiting. We will now open up the budget hearing. We'll do it, I guess, much in the same manner. Ruben has an overview of the budget that the board has been working on since, I guess, late November. It was like before Thanksgiving. We started working on this budget proposal, finalized it end of December, beginning of January. Actually, I'm not quite sure. It was quite a number of meetings that we've been through this, so a lot of work's gone into this budget. So we'll present it, certainly be here to answer questions, and then after that, close the hearing and move on to recommendations. So a lot of material here, but let's get started.
All right, so we'll talk about some demographics, staffing, students, talk about tax implications, the article itself, and then the board will just, we'll have a dialogue around that, and then the board can take action or choose to keep things the way they are. Staffing has remained stable over the last couple of years. We do have one more FTE this year than last year. Last year during the deliberative session, a motion was made to provide STEM education over at Ringe Memorial School. So that's an example of, that's why that one is more than the year before. Most staffing that you see the increase on is not in the area of teachers, but in the area of associates, individuals who are providing special ed services. That's that bottom right-hand graph there. Some clerical or administrative assistance as well, as the state provides us with more to do, more to be accountable for. More support is often necessary to make sure that we're, I guess, for no better way of saying, just dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's to make sure that we're following the guidelines that are laid out for us.
And I think it's important to clarify what Ruben just said, that it is the support staff and some clerical staff, and what it isn't is more superintendent staffing, more principals. Any of those levels have remained the same for quite some time, and even gone down over the past few years.
Also going down, student enrollment. So that has been going down, and that's across the state of New Hampshire in general, minus a couple different communities. Student enrollment. That being said, these numbers are a little bit inaccurate from the standpoint, or perhaps maybe not inaccurate, misleading, because we are responsible for hundreds of other individuals. An example would be charter schools. If learners are in Jaffrey or in Ringe and they go to a charter school, we are responsible for a variety of services still to them. So certainly there are special ed services, as well as, well, for instance, we do all the screening for dyslexia and so forth. Even though that's a regular education process, we take that on as well, which does have a cost involved in that.
This number doesn't include students that are tuitioned out to other schools.
It does not include, the out of districts and things. No, it's just people who are here at this campus right here. Yep. You can see that those pre-K numbers below have stayed pretty steady. That's important. Homeschool, I would say, where have the numbers, gone? A lot of, I would say, homeschoolers, I have data on how many go to private, how many go to charter, how many homeschool. This has always been a very large homeschooling community. And we certainly respect that, want to serve that. We do have homeschoolers coming here. We just talked about CTE. We do have a larger number of individuals who take part of our education. And then here, this is our annual graph on cost per pupil. Cost per pupil does continue to increase. We're the orange bar, and so the black bar is the state average. We have, in my time here, I guess we were maybe at the state average, maybe a little bit above when I first came. We've been able to stay below that state average. I think we're actually, state funding wise, I think we're in the bottom quartile, to be honest with you, of the state.
This data just came out.
We go back and forth with Messinic and Keene. Keene has a much broader group of individuals so that they stabilize pretty well. The smaller schools tend to go up and down, and obviously there are some other schools in the area that are much higher. You were saying?
Yeah, when I looked at this data, right, certainly the average is a good piece of information, lets you know where you are. But I took a look at the rankings, like cost per pupil. So there's 161 districts that are on the state's report. Out of that, we rank 125th in cost per pupil. So, right, and that's about, we're at like the, 77% of districts spend more per pupil than us. So that cost per pupil, certainly there's a lot of towns directly near us, but if you were to rank us across the state, based on what I pulled up, it is 125th out of 161. If you want to, because we understand that the tax implications, the pressure. So we look to I know I do personally look to benchmark you know, our cost to everybody else that deals with the same things. So that gives you an indication of our spending level here in this district compared to everybody else.
Yeah, Chris and Ruben, thank you for highlighting that because, you know, the cost of education and why it's so high, there's a lot that can be said about that. But the fact is that Jaffrey Ridge District has kept that cost down and that we're less expensive than 120 other districts across the state out of 160 is something I think a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, and if you look at that top, you know, the least spending schools, it's the Nashuas, it's the Salems, it's the Manchesters. They all have that right economy of scale where they're able to provide.
Right.
You know, there's certainly some other smaller schools in there as well, but every single one of the larger districts that's able to, you know, these rural districts for the most part are among the more expensive ones. So we're a bit of an outlier, us in Messinic, as far as that's concerned.
So we'll go through a couple of these articles because in this budget, we're going to talk about the budget for certain, but we're also just going to talk about all the articles that are going to be on the warrant. So I'll read Article 1. To choose the following school district officers, 1 moderator for a term, 1 Ringe school board member, 3-year term, 1 Jaffrey school board member for a 3-year term, and 1 at-large school board member for a 3-year term. And then it's important for those out there who are listening, and we'll broadcast this further, but persons interested in being a candidate for school district office may file starting Wednesday, that's next week, January 22nd, 2025. The deadline for filing, if you're interested in being on the ballot, is 5 p.m. on Friday, January 31st. So for the following week after that. So you have about a week and a half. Persons wishing to file should contact the school district at 532-8122. You can also stop on over at 1 Conant Way. Article 2. I'm not going to spend much time on this one because we just spent a lot of time on this one. So this conversation was just had. Again, this article was or is about the proposed CTE construction. Article 3. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $33,760,452. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $33,858,458, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the school district or by law, or the governing body may hold 1 special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of the revised operating budget only. Majority vote is required. We don't know what the vote is going to be for the recommendation of this by the school board yet. And you can see the estimated tax impact on passing the article and also the tax impact if the article were not to be voted in the affirmative. So this operating budget warrant article does not include operations contained in any other warrant articles.
Yeah, I guess we'll open up to questions, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could just come up, just so you could get on the, I know it's a pain in the butt, but so people online can hear you.
Tom Cody's Ringe.
Yep.
I just want to know what your calculation is on. Is it on a $250,000 house like it was when I visited the first budget hearing, or is it on a $350,000 house?
This calculation is a little
The tax estimate.
This is a little different. This is, yeah, this, the other one that we did earlier, we did it like, all right, hey, if you have a $350,000 home, this is the amount that would be on your tax bill. This is based upon a per thousand.
All right.
Yep.
Checking.
Yep. No, it's a good question.
And
You
I-
presented it the same way the last time.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll talk about how to. Certainly we did it on the presentation with that $350,000, just so people can picture it. But I think when we talk about wording for that first article, or the second article, we'll standard, if we do put that wording on, which we intend to, we'll standardize it to look like this.
I'll talk about the article a little bit and then we'll take some conversation about this. We went into the budget. We have priorities every single year. Last year's priorities were around making certain that we were solidifying pre-K, that we were enhancing our focus on literacy across the schools. I'm pleased to say that especially at the Ed Committee, if you were able to see that, and hopefully we'll post that online, the qualitative data that we have on our reading and our elementaries right now and our writing is very impressive, even just within the 4 weeks. So I'm excited to see what happens within the spring of this first year. I know our teachers are tired because the work has been incredibly demanding with a lot of new learning, but it's been great. And we're able to do that as a cohort of individuals and qualified educators because we've been able to retain, identify, and recruit highly qualified educators who are committed to our institutional values and philosophy. We are in it together. We understand our leadership process here, which is a collaborative or collective leadership model, not a top-down model of leadership. We all function, we all teach, we all get into classrooms, we all lead, we all innovate. That is what we do, and we work together toward the same goals. We need people to stay so that we can continue our forward momentum and then have those outcomes that we're looking for our kids. We also need to identify and be able to recruit individuals when we do have openings. That's what that means. And then two, to ensure current initiatives that we've been working on for the past decade, breaking down old systems that were ineffective, building new systems, and now operating in those systems for the very first time to make sure that we have educational improvement moving forward. Just a note on that, when we post it, if we haven't posted it yet, we'll have to send it out, but send out the links anyway to post the newest data that's come back, or not data, the write-up, the recommendations and all of that from our New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Our accreditation gave us accolades, accredited the middle school for the first time ever. Very few middle schools are accredited by NEASC. It's an arduous process, but also the linkage between the 6th grade through the 12th grade and everything really happening curriculum and instruction wise and community wise seamlessly all the way through was seen as a very strong positive. Certainly something to build upon. We have the default budget summary here. Every year we're asked, what does it mean? What does this default budget mean? And it's the same as the previous year or the prior year with some adjustments, legal or perhaps based upon what voters have already put into place. So you can see that increases to this default budget would include JREA and JRSA, CBA salaries and benefits step increases. We'll talk about those numbers in just a little while. Any retiree buybacks, that's also within the contract. Health insurance rates increases for JREA and JRSSA employees. So the JREA, for those who are watching online and those who are here, that's your Teachers Association and your Support Staff Association. And so there are contracts, you can view those online. And so they have health and dental coverage there at specific rates and so forth. Teacher lane changes, support staff, retirement account increases, and then student services, staffing and placement. So required, but that's that required by law piece. And then transportation. That's either contracted transportation with regular education, or it's transportation that is required by law for special education to other locations. Or to here, I suppose. Decreases to that would be debt service interest. Our retiree buybacks are this year are less than what they were last year. So there's actually a decrease in that area. New Hampshire retirement system rate decreases. Sometimes they increase. This year they did decrease by a little bit. Contracted services. And then our utilities change. And this year we expect our utilities to be less than what they were. This is just a slide that shows, some changes. Try not to get into a lot of the definitions. Our proposed budget has that 5.95 or roughly 6% increase from last year's approved budget, whereas our default budget is a 4.4% increase over last year's adopted budget. Excuse me. The approved budget is what was on the warrant article last year. So from what's going on to the warrant article this year, from what was on the warrant article last year, it's the 5.95% increase. The adopted budget includes other warrant articles that were passed. So the default budget takes into consideration all those the CBA that, for instance, that was passed last year. Now, if we're going to compare apples to apples and we're going to look at the percent increase, we're going to look at the percent increase over the adopted budget. What totally is in our current operating budget? And so you'd see that, this is the proposed over last year's approved. That's just another picture. But you see that this is a picture of that the two values, the purple and the green, in comparison to the current year's adopted budget. And so you'll see that the proposed budget's less than the default budget. Now, when we first started, the proposed budget was about $1.2 million higher than what it is right now. The default budget was a little higher as well than what it is right now. In order to, the school board said, you got to cut it. We got to get down. There weren't a lot of clear places to cut that. We'll explain where some of those cuts came from, because they're more like trend cuts than anything, about $800,000 worth of just changing the way we budgeted, not necessarily taking things out, just looking at finances differently. And in doing so, because a future slide is going to show, most of our budget is staffing, and staffing is in your default budget. If we reduce the proposed budget, you often reduce the default budget in that process as well. But we have to be careful how we go about doing that. This is the breakdown in general of what money is spent on. Personnel is 3/4 of the budget. Here are notable changes that come out to roughly a $1.3 million net. Some of it's subtraction. The bottom one is in red is a reduction. But we had first of all, right off the top, that's not even in this presentation at all. You're just taking out. We took out $500,000 out of special ed. So we felt we could do that for a couple reasons. It's not out of any specific location in special education. It's just out of special education. We try to take it out of as few lines as possible, because transferring money throughout the year this takes an incredible amount of time and energy, and so we want to try to make the process easy. But $500,000, basically, if we're going to look at trends where we have had excess funds in the past, like last year, we gave back a fair amount of money. A lot of it was in student services. Last year was more because we couldn't hire people for those roles, coupled with a couple of students had moved out of the community that had some high priced placements. So we were able to put that back, give that back to the taxpayers. We're pleased that we're really one of the only communities maybe in the region, you know, not many throughout the state, that we actually had the school portion of our taxes decrease in both towns. We were pleased about that we were able to do that. So that was great. That, you know, but we have, again, the special ed, we took that $500,000 off because it's of likely spending. And also because we do have a buffer. If we get in trouble, we do have a special education contingency trust fund.
Yeah, and I guess for people that weren't able to attend those conversations, Ruben's exactly right. The board, you know, asked the administration to go back and say, listen, we've been giving back money at the end of every year. Let's take a hard look at that. You know, our goal is to run as close to that budget as possible. What do we actually need? And so as we're talking about that $1.2 million in cuts, that was the driver there. And again, knowing that we do have, again, a reserve fund if necessary. Of course, we don't think we'll need it. We want to make responsible cuts. But that was the thinking there.
So the increases, and understand from last year's approved budget, meaning what you voted on the warrant article, this budget includes the first year of the CBA, the JRA CBA, which is roughly 550,000, plus this second year of the CBA, 590,000. So it automatically goes up by over $1 million. So that's in here. That's a notable change from now the adopted budget, because in this year's budget, we do have that 550,000. Health insurance and dental insurance, our rates, we've, again, because of really smart negotiations in the past, we've saved the district probably millions at this point in time. We'd be higher. That being said, we had higher rate increases this year than we typically have. Again, still glad that we're not going up $1 million like some places nearby, but $380,000 is a lot of money. And so we are going up in our health insurance mainly, not so much our dental. School administration, SAU exempt employees, which involves a variety of people, SAU non-exempt salaries, health and dental, all that, everything put together is in that 225,000 right there. Transportation increases, that's in regular ed, that's contractual. We do have a little bit, I didn't put it in here because I don't think they're noticeable. We do have about $13,000 of increase in special ed transportation. It's not as big as it has been in the past. JRSSA CBA, we are on another year of that. And that's about $180,000 step increases. Special ed increases, actually overall, out of district placements is, this is as a result of actually some investing that we've done. So I'm pleased to say that it's not as high next year as what we've had last year. I think last year we experienced about 700,000, you know, we might even be able to, you know, make that less even in the future as we keep on improving our programming. We would, if we had not invested in developing the restorative classrooms at Jaffrey Grade School, again, the budget went up by probably over 2 years because we're now in our second iteration of this, you know, by about $250,000 for the staffing. We are now, with the population of kids that we have in there that would be going to out of district placement due to the particular type of needs, we are keeping these kids in district, about 8 of them right now. They are going to, they're functioning beautifully. State came in, gave us 6 more years of approval, and are with the understanding that we're trying to keep them in district and slowly ease them back into the regular ed setting over a period of 5 to 6 years. We are this year alone saving $400,000 that we did not have to put into the budget. It's probably, that's a very solid number. It's probably closer to $500,000 to closer to $600,000 because it depends on placement, plus transportation is expensive. So it's paying off. That investment is paying off, and it will continue to do that. Think of it, even if it's $500,000 that you're saving that you never see in here, you're like, oh, it's going up. It could be going up so much more. And we are saving that $500,000 every single year for the rest of those learners' experience in education, because it just compounds. All right. So budget reductions, along with the 500,000 that you didn't see in here because we just took the trend money out. This is a more noticeable reduction. Again, it's just, this is a practice. This was tough because of what we just did. We are pretty accurate with our budgeting around new employees. We have budgeted for years on the scale of masters step 5. It used to be a lot higher. We said, oh, this is inflated. We'll bring it down to where it should be. We've been pretty accurate. We decided, all right, this is a place that we can cut funding and be careful with our spending. We changed our budget practice to bachelor step 1, which reduces 137,000 out of the budget. Health changes, instead of budgeting for a 2-person plan, we can budget for a 1-person plan. That saves money. And this is all for open positions. We're not talking about every single person here. We're talking about open positions that don't exist, that we haven't hired yet. And then retirement, New Hampshire retirement. We have a lot of individuals within our clubs and athletics who aren't school employees. And so they don't, even though we budget New Hampshire retirement typically for all of those positions, they wouldn't be subject to New Hampshire retirement. So we removed that out of those types of positions to save 316,000 of extra dollars. So that's the story with the notable changes to this budget from the budget prior to this.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Ruben, yeah, thank you for going through all those items that we've become more familiar with. We've had a chance to hear about this, ask questions about it. It's funny, every year you mention the health insurance savings that resulted from a health insurance contract that school board with your leadership was able to enter into. Was it 8 years ago, maybe?
My first year. So it would have been, this is my 10th year. So it would have been in 2015.
So, I mean, I think part of what we've seen as a school board is some wise decisions that you pursued. And, with the help of the board and with the help of the staff too. Earlier today, you talked about, before the bond hearing, we talked about the change in the contract to allow for critical need, you could call it, for nurses. Again, not many people, I think, would have taken that initiative, but the result would have been using contracted services that would have increased our costs, and as you pointed out, also decreased the connection between those nurses and the students, especially the students with special needs. And the last thing I want to mention is this whole question of student services and student need. Pretty much everybody nowadays has heard how expensive it is, how much of our school budgets go into that. But we also know that the needs are immense, and to not fill those needs, not only is it illegal, but it's just a bad decision for our community, for the kids, and for everybody. And so when you talk about that restorative classroom and how that effort resulted in keeping students in district who otherwise would have had to go out of district at another significant increased cost. We've had, as a board, the chance to hear you talk about that, ask you questions, and see the value of it. So,
yeah, and Jen Horn, director, is to be commended for the implementation of that. Certainly, the Jaffrey Grade School, in cooperation with the Ridge Memorial School on that. Leah Giles, what a find of a teacher who came in to lead that effort. And then, of course, Alexis Compton, who was already a teacher in the district and said, yeah, I see this need and this is exciting. Let's take on that second iteration of the restorative classroom. And of course, the other individuals who work in those areas. Amazing, amazing job.
And as you mentioned earlier, you've attracted good staff and kept those staff here.
Well, that's in line with our goals. Yep.
On the education committee, we saw a video, which is not made available to the public because it did have learners' faces.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing video about the restorative classroom at Jaffrey Grade School and the successes that they've met. And so we can, because we're in a budget meeting, we talk about the numbers, the amount of money that we've saved, but also to see that video and see how much these children have learned and grown was just really moving and is a true testament to the excellent staff and the leadership to create such a program so that these kids are have a normal school day. They're not on a bus going to Nashua or to Massachusetts and coming home at 4 o'clock when they're in kindergarten and first grade. They're coming home same time as their brothers and sisters. They have brothers and sisters, and they're able to participate in their community. So they're learning more in school, they're thriving, they're able to participate in their community. And guess what? We're saving money. It's really amazing.
Yeah, we're saving a lot, and we're going to save a lot more. Just an added little piece of that, we are really spearheaded from the Hinsdale and Winchester superintendent. We're going to be a group of us from the region are going to be looking at trying to build or find or figure out a way to be more collaborative around out of district placements in a closer area of the region so that we can, one, keep our kids around here because it's getting harder and harder, and control costs. So we're trying those collaborative efforts as well. We'll see how that goes. We're just starting those conversations.
Yeah.
Boney's Wrench. I'm looking at the numbers and it looks like you did some homework. The first hearing I went to, several months ago now, I guess, a couple anyway. The proposed budget was pretty high. And so I think you've done a good job to bring it down below the default, very similar to what you did last year. But what items or what dollar amount were purchased from excess funds this year so that you could remove them from the budget just like you did last year?
It's a great question.
How many dollars did that account for that basically was unspent, but you spent it for next year's use in out of this year's budget, if I haven't saying that right? And you did a pretty significant amount last year, if I'm not mistaken.
We did.
Which I call it's kind of smoke and mirrors, but I'm just going to ask how many dollars this year?
Yeah. So the board has approved approximately $550,000 worth of spending.
How much?
550,000. Yep. So for curriculum materials, for a lot of it's safety things that we need to get done, such as PA systems in all the schools. When we had that that big lockdown earlier in the year, we found that we had some significant blank spots. That was concerning, and got some feedback from local law enforcement.
Last year.
Similar, yeah. Last year's focus, we spent money largely on literacy, which was smart to do. We acted swiftly on that. That was nice, and there's some, I would say
this year's
equipment,
a lot on facilities.
Yeah, facilities, equipment,
needs that we have.
Technology again. We are kind of in a cycle of, needing to get Chromebooks annually. We know what happened the year that we didn't choose to do that. That was a big problem, and so we will be doing that this year as well. That's in the tune of about 65,000, but that's part of that little over $500,000. Good question. That is absolutely true.
Yeah, so when you look at this list as far as like board choices, right? That's certainly one that we made, Tom, in order to do that, much like we did last year. as far as I look at this other list, as far what we chose to add. If I go down, the only thing that I see on here that was a board choice as far as increase the budget is raises for school administrators, right? The other ones are all contractual.
Well, school administrators, and we're not just talking administrators, we're talking
Yep.
about.
Yeah, all
those
exempt.
Administrative
exempt
business,
employees, right?
yep,
Non-exempt.
non-exempt,
Non-exempt,
yep, daycare workers, all that kind of stuff, yep.
Yeah, so right, we chose to, teachers were getting raised, the rest of the staff, certainly in this environment, that was our choice. The rest of these, we haven't added anything, every single other budget, I think all the school budgets are
Flat,
are flat.
0% increases.
So that's the summary.
I thought we were gonna have the normal documents. So I'm looking them back up, because I only printed a few, Roberta Acer Renge. So I just heard you say that special education was reduced 500. I'm looking at a $360,000 increase.
I'll say that 500,000 from our first proposed budget in
That
November.
never wasn't a budget yet. It was a working, so it didn't get decreased. I'm going, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it hasn't been approved, right, Roberta? We need to start somewhere.
Well, those numbers reflected the actual values of everything that we needed to do.
It's the wish list.
It's not a wish list. It
Not
covers
special
all costs that are mandated by law, and they're the exact amounts that we know. So they're the known costs. The reason why we took a blank, just a $500,000 out, was because we've had trends of not spending all of those funds. Things do change. If someone moves out and has a $300,000 placement and they no longer attend, they don't live in Jaffrey anymore, we don't have to pay that money out. That would then go back to taxpayers. Well, I heard you say was, let's, rather than doing it at the end of the year, take it off the front end. And so
Yeah,
that's
and,
what
you know, we try and look at wish list items and say,
we have
if it's
zero.
just a wish list, then it's optional, it's expendable. And I'm not saying with everything, I mean, for example, our literature course, the program that we introduced to try and get our students up higher into the proficiency range for the state, we don't consider that a wish list item. We consider that a need for our students. But there's lots of other things that, yeah, if there are wish list items, they didn't make it. If they're required by law, that's a different story. And there are a lot of these things that are required by law. If we didn't budget for some of the special education needs that we budget for, we would not be doing our duty and would be liable, in fact, liable to be sued potentially by a parent who came in with a child who had a need and we hadn't budgeted to fill that position. Now, Ruben talked earlier about how we changed some of those positions. Instead of assuming a master's 5, we might have said, well, maybe we can get someone, you know, a lower cost. So,
this is a budget hearing, not a feel-good thing.
oh, it is a budget hearing, but when you say something like,
Okay, it was
it's a wish list.
It
you know,
was a draft.
Of course, everything is a draft until it's approved.
Yeah, when you say
Even
you
after,
cut
even after we,
500 out of it, it sounds like you cut it from the budget from last year, because that's what we're talking about. A proposed budget now.
Well, we're talking about the budget for this year.
That's right.
Yeah, I think I said 500 from the original proposal that was there, but if I didn't, I may have misspoken. I apologize.
Yeah, well, I didn't see that. That's what I meant. So I do have some questions. So the budget, the last actual budget, hard numbers, because this year is only halfway through, was the 23-24 budget. And you sent out a newsletter, and now I just heard something different, that of the 1.7 million that was given back, it was predominantly due to staffing. Well, if the estimates that you had for staffing positions, that would be like a dozen positions to be mostly from staffing. So now I just heard it's it was, from other things, not just staffing. So how many of the positions that you didn't have in 23-24 did you fill this year?
We have filled probably, I think we're still down 3 teaching positions in special education that are unfilled.
So how many was it and
Quite a
that you
few.
did fill?
I'd have to, it was teaching positions and paraprofessionals in the special ed realm. And so it could have been as close to 12 as what you're talking about, not 12 teachers, but 12 staff members. It was a lot. We had a lot of our administrators were in the schools consistently as a result of that, and people doing double duty.
So it would still be down some from
This
that.
year, yeah, we've identified that we have some open positions right now. Yeah.
So, okay, the other thing I asked.
Most other positions, regular ed, are filled. We've been fortunate. That's been good.
So at the last meeting, I asked about what the NESDEC calls choice in K through 12, and the year that we're using for apportionment. It has that there's 12 students here from out of district. Where are they in the apportionment? What school, what town are they attributed to? Because they're in the school count.
Sure.
They're in the student count.
Yeah.
So what town is paying for them?
So there's the positions that you're talking about, or the learners you're talking about, fit into a couple different categories. There's a cluster of them that, and we can't get very specific because of the reason, but there's a cluster of them that are homeless. So if they are McKinney-Vento, they would be from a variety of communities. And the way the law is that we would share transportation if they desire to come to this school system with whatever other community that are in, but also they can come here for that time frame that they are homeless. So we have a few of those. We have an individual or two who are considered, what's it? I'd have to look at the foster children. And then the remainder of those are the learners who have been allowed to come here who are children of faculty members.
So 12.
Do the exchange students count in that number? No. The exchange students are not in that number. No, but we do have 2 exchange students from Sweden. Yes.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's a pretty large number, and it could have a pretty good effect on one town's or the other's apportionment. And it's kind of, I noticed that it was less than 10 in 2021.
Yeah.
And then it was 0.
A number that is increasing in many ways, and it's going to cost us more. We don't have it budgeted in here. But we'll have to find a way. Homelessness, McKinney-Vento, this is the highest number of difficult situations we've experienced in the last decade, maybe ever in the Jaffrey Ridge Cooperative School District. That trend seems to be true in other areas of the state right now. So people can't afford renting, they don't have a stable home. There's some different definitions of that. I would expect to see that number increase.
So you don't have an answer.
An answer to, what was the question, Roberta?
She wants to know what town these kids are being attributed to.
They're in the count for apportionment.
Oh, like you're talking about where the state funds are going for them?
It says we're getting $3,000 in tuition for 12 students.
I don't know as though I think they're
vocational.
that would probably be vocational. I mean, we're getting a lot more Yeah, that hasn't come in. I don't think they're
Because the
getting
state
anything.
aid for vocational is 3,000
You're talking
students,
about
so
state
I'm wondering if that's
aid or-
vocational.
No, it has, well, these are called choice in students. And then in the income summary, the only thing for tuition from out of district
be
students
evenly
is like
split?
$3,000.
They're just evenly split.
It says tuition, special ed, vocational and other. It's the only place there is any place for
Yeah, I'm talking about,
choice
I'm
in
talking about the.
income. I mean, that's the only category.
Isn't that based on the court? Isn't the court determine wherever the court has placed? I don't know how that.
She's asking,
Yeah.
she's asking who's paying.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm
Oh, okay.
suggesting
All
it's
right.
because
I understand the
there's
question
court
now.
placing them in this
Yeah,
specific
which
town.
town are they
And that's
attributed
what
to?
I'll just choose.
Okay. I didn't understand the question.
They are in the, they're in the student count for 20,
I don't know.
whatever year, 23, 24.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to research that question and that answer. I don't know.
Are they in that student count?
They are in the student count.
All right.
Okay, my final.
I will say, Roberta, like, the portion of that is staff, right? The students of staff, that is a policy that we have, and again, goes to kind of one of our core goals of retention. And we do look at that closely. That number is important to us. That it doesn't add any incremental costs. So that's a conversation that we have in non-public meetings with Ruben, because if you do take a number like 12 is big, right? But if you take that over grades 1 through 12 plus pre-K, right? That's 14 grades, 12 kids, 4 schools.
This is
Realistically,
not pre-K, that these numbers that I just
no,
gave you.
but still, right? Let's say 1 through 12, right? 12 kids, that's 1 kid per grade in 4 schools. We have that conversation with Ruben. We'll adding, and it depends on the mix, right? Where they fall. Certainly, if there is any incremental cost, that's a discussion that the board has. And I don't ever remember having a discussion where we've.
Yeah, and the policy on that as it pertains to staff, children is also that if they're to go and see if they qualify for a voucher. And that would, bring that income into the school. If the decision for in this legislature is to go toward more universal vouchers, and that would be just a thing we would add into our policies that would automatically come our way. Which it's not a ton of money, it's what you get for all the kids, it's basically adequacy that funds that they have right now, which is certainly inadequate. But so that I can say that's what would happen in the future. And but yeah, if they qualify for the formula for that type of funding, it's supposed to come to our school.
Well, if they're in the student count, and now I'm looking at this and it's 1,317 students, and this last one said there were 1,291. Actually, yeah, it's like, that's quite a jump on the student enrollment from 23-24. That's quite a bit more than what was in the report. So that jumped. But that's my point, is where are these dozen students being calculated?
So
It makes a difference.
I think Roberta's getting at the ADM.
Yeah.
And wants to know.
What's the document you're looking at?
Huh?
What's the document you're looking at?
Oh, I just printed this, and this is different than yesterday.
Well, what's the document to 12 students?
Oh, it's from the report that's published, the NESDEC.
Okay.
Yeah, we provide NESDEC with the numbers.
Yeah, I've spent some time reading. And it had the 23-24 enrollment rate quite a bit lower than what's 13-17. And that was PK, through 12. So one of the questions you know, everybody talks about 3% is flat. The problem is not the 4.5%. The problem is the 11.5% on top of the 15% from 3 years ago that the taxpayers are paying. And that's where you're going to have an issue, because that's what it is. You know, you're jumping now this 14%, the district assessment, on top of there was another 15% increase a few years ago. The people in Ringe, yeah, there's a lot of people that have moved in from town and they got all kinds of money. There's a lot of people, like a few of us, that are on fixed incomes. And a 30% increase in our taxes over 3 years isn't sustainable. I mean, it's going to tax people right out of their homes. People that have lived their entire lives there, not the people that have just moved in, paying $1 million cash for these houses and still have money to spare. They don't care, but a lot of people do, and we just can't afford it. So I know the big issue is state funding, but that's not who's paying the taxes locally. The state, they don't care. So,
agreed.
Yeah. So, it's just, I understand, quality education, having good school districts, what it does for real estate values, which I wouldn't care if they went down right now, to tell you the truth. They just have gotten out of control. But anyway, and it looks like you spent, from what Tom's question was,
I don't know.
You said go from, about $500,000, and you've got another almost $500,000 that you're gonna use for bond, for warrant articles. That you haven't just gotten to yet, but I don't know. I think having the $1 million slush fund, which I voted for and supported, hasn't made you sharpen your pencils. You've got that as your emergency money. So you shouldn't have $1 million left in addition to the unassigned fund balance. Should be much tighter. Thank you.
I'd just like to say something, which is that you're right, we can't change what the state does with property taxes, but our local representatives can make a change. And it's not necessary to abandon the property tax system or to change the state funding system, even though some people might like that, right? But there are small changes that could be made that would have an impact on keeping our property taxes from rising so fast. In the next month or so, I predict, based on everything I'm hearing, that the Freedom Accounts eligibility is going to be increased dramatically, meaning a lot more parents are going to be eligible for that. Meanwhile, there's going to be a discussion on adequacy aid and on other types of state aid. Guess what? The money's not going to come to those programs if it's all going to electronic freedom accounts. And our legislators, our local legislators, could help. Again, without changing the system totally, they could make changes that would improve this situation.
Could I comment on that? I just heard today they still are planning on putting an income limit on the voucher. Also, when you were talking about health insurance, I know your rates went up. We have a very smart lady in Ringe that did an analysis and saw how much our health insurance was compared to our total wages, and so she got us going we went out to bid. It would have saved over $100,000. Remember, we only have 30 employees and not all of them are uninsured. Over $100,000. And there was supposed to be a pretty good increase. And, it's like everybody's happy. I mean, it's the same coverage, they did a lot of research. So we didn't think, the municipality didn't think that we could just go out there. And I think it's the same with school district, it's like, we thought we were stuck. So there might be ways to save money. We never put it out to bid. The town didn't, I'm on the BAC, so it's. But that's substantial for our budget.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to something that John was just talking about, seeing as we have a strong Ridge representation. I don't know, and Roberta, I know that you're into looking at data as well. I don't know if you looked at the numbers that were released of the number of students taking advantage of the Education Freedom accounts from each town that came out a couple months ago. And they listed all 256 towns, and the top 5 had over 100 to over 200. And those top 5 were Nashua, Rochester, Manchester, Concord, and Ringe. Ringe has 117 students that took advantage of the Education Freedom account last year, over $500,000 from taxpayers, from the school, going back into Ringe families' pockets from this school. So that money, that populace of students that we have, of compared to this is how much money per student, we have to start putting that Education Freedom account money into that. Like, that's 117 students just Ringe that are not being educated in public school that are getting our money, so this is a very real, very big issue right now of how this money is being accounted for and where it's coming from, because we're struggling to find stuff that we need federally for law to get through when this money's being sieved from us.
So qualify. I feel your pain.
Here, come on up to the mic, okay, so that we do have an online presence.
Jim Kreitzer, Ringe. So I feel your pain, because any business, and you're a business, that runs with a budget, and suddenly there are all these income streams that disappear. So what are you going to do? Well, you're either going to cut, or you're going to push back on why you lost that income stream. You have to ask always, when you're in business, why did I lose that income stream? If you ask the people in Ringe or Jaffrey, why do you educate elsewhere? They will give you a bunch of reasons. I don't need to go there. I don't have kids in the system, so it's a qualification. But I know people who private school, et cetera, homeschool, et cetera. And they don't like your business. That's the bottom line. So yes, the state system could get much worse, and it could really, really impact the public school systems in the state. And I hope common sense prevails, because the current direction is not good. But you still have to ask yourself, my customers are moving away. That's it.
But Jim, it's not it, because we're not a private business.
What?
We are a public business
I got that.
whose public funding is being taken for private businesses.
I still feel your
That's it.
pain. I'm on your side, Lisa. Okay, you cannot run a business when the money's being taken away from you. And it's true, you're public, and you're in a system that has been established for a long period of time. And people are eroding that. Okay. That said, it's beyond your control and the taxpayer control at this stage to fix that. There's always been private schooling, and that's the competition. Okay. You can't mandate, Lisa, that there won't be private schools.
And I would never. Jim, I homeschooled for 11 years. That money would have been life-changing for me, life-changing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no problem with money going to people who are choosing alternative schooling. Please know that. I have no problem with that.
Right.
The fact that it's being taken from our kids is sick. And there is a very twisted system involved here.
Well,
And with no accountability. But we probably should get back to this hearing so we can have this conversation another time.
that's right.
But we should get
But,
back to the.
No, this is
to
an
the-
emotional issue. And you should understand that taxpayers, even as myself, dealing with ever increasing taxes, trying to figure out where this can be fixed. Your point is well taken. We need to talk to our reps. Thanks.
Please do.
Ashley, sorry, Range. I was just gonna say, I feel like, wow, this is an interesting conversation. We're getting off topic, and since it's past 9 o'clock, I would like to move on.
Thank you.
You heard that, Tom?
What's that? Yeah, I heard it.
You heard that, right?
Is
Great.
having started 3 companies, you are not a business. You never should be, and you never will be, because businesses don't have to satisfy special education laws. Businesses have different sets of rules. A school district has to satisfy laws that don't govern businesses. So we shouldn't run a school system as a business, because it isn't. And the second one is that, what does it cost to go to private school? I used to be a private school teacher. The average private school tuition is between $40,000 and $50,000. Okay, we educate kids for $23,000. So you tell me, where is the value proposition? So we're already very good at it. And so if it's competition you're after, you can afford the $50,000, go pay it. But that's not the situation we have.
All right, so again, the floor's Ruben, I don't know what, I guess we did get off track a little bit, but we've had a suitable amount of questions, I think, and I agree with Ashley that we should probably, in the interest of time and all the other things we have to talk about, move along.
Sure. So we had a discussion regarding the budget, which is a 4.1% increase. If the budget were to fail, it would be a 4.4% increase over last year. Adopted budget. So show the Article 4. This is a contractual warrant article. This is about what our first conversation was at 6 o'clock today in a board meeting. Basically, it started off with not being able to hire nurses, hard to find positions. And so it's not a large increase, but just as the idea is, shall the school district vote to ratify the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement modification reached between the Jaffrey Ridge Cooperative School District and the Jaffrey Ridge Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits to the amount previously approved by voters at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. You can see 2025-26 is a little as 20,776, and 26-27 will be 20,774. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of 20,776 for the 2025-26 fiscal year. Such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. And then the majority vote required, similar language at the bottom about estimated tax impact. Estimated small tax impact, relatively speaking. It's a small group of people we're talking about here. It's a change that is to help retain individuals who are necessary and committed to our district and our kids, and have become increasingly more important to the school system, nurses, and to also recruit them, as we've had a problem doing so. And we are paying for that in a different way, whether this passes or not. We're going to pay that $20,000 in costs to contracted services, which we are doing right now to a company. What that looks like is just different scale. These dollars amounts match certain columns already in the teacher's contract, so nothing was changed per se, just they're going to be able to access more of the lanes. They were only accessing one lane before. So they're being treated more equitably with the rest of the teachers in this. That's the change. And then proposed language. The state has made put some mandates on certain types of our positions in order to be able to have the restorative classroom, in order to be able to have the intensive learning center at the elementary schools, to be able to keep kids in our district. Teachers now need to be dual certified, or you need to have 2 teachers, one of each certification, which is of course a very costly model. So if they are required to have that dual certification, then we want to be able to compensate them a little bit more for that recognition and being able to go in and access and get that certification, which we have people doing right now. The nurse coordinator, paying that person for the district basically support that person does, even though they work in a specific school, they're helping the entire district. And then a clause in there to, if we can't hire people, then we need teachers to take on extra assignments if they so choose to do so and are willing to do so, then paying them a certain percentage in addition to their salary, based upon their salary, in order to be able to do that. That's would be in the budget already. It's not an addition to the budget. It would be actually a savings in a sense to the that year, whatever the year is, what that year's budget would be. And then this is the critical need clause that gives the board flexibility to figure out how to hire people, basically maybe incentivize hiring of specific groups if they're deemed critical need, we can't find them. So that's so mostly language. None of that language goes into the warrant article, but that's what's behind everything. And we can take comments or questions. Seeing none about Article 4, go to Article 5. That's just if Article 4 gets defeated, shall the school district, if it is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address the cost items only of Article 4. Article 6. This is something that we have each year. Just trying to build that special ed contingency trust fund in case of an emergency type of situation where we are having an influx of whether it be out of district placements or other needs, as those costs are vulnerable. So shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate up to $50,000 to be placed in the expendable trust fund established in 2005, known as the Special Education Contingency Fund, created for the purpose of building a reserve for unanticipated special education costs, with such amount to be funded from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. So that would only be funded up to $50,000 if there's funds left over. This is a little bit of a history of that. The current balance is $520,000 and 40. Yeah, right there. That's what's in there. We had added 50,000 last year, 150,000 a year before. You can see a little bit of the history of that. There was one year during every year we've added something. One year we didn't do it.
What is the current balance?
520,462. And then similarly, we need to get, we're still working on a more understandable multi-year facilities plan, even working on that tomorrow actually with the group. But we have identified specific things already that need to be done. Windows at Jaffrey Grade School, the track needs to be resurfaced. It's at the end of its life or very close there too. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate up to $400,000 to be placed in the capital reserve fund created for the reconstruction and repair of real estate buildings, and capital equipment of the district established in 1990 and amended in 1999, with such amount to be funded from, similar to the other article, from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1. I don't think I have the existing amount in there right now because it's just fluctuated, but I think we have, I could find that, but I think we are at, after the last payment, I think we're at about 160,000 or 170,000, but we can give you that information. So again, if there's money left over, up to 400,000. And this slide right here talks about all of the proposals, if all of them were, Article 2, the bond, Article 3, Article 4, there's Article 5, 6, and 7 don't have any tax impact that is additional anyway. It is fair to say that there is a tax impact when you take money from surplus, meaning it doesn't go back to offset taxes. Last year, we had a surplus. It was chosen to go back to taxes so that we could, help people out, when in any way we possibly could. And it turned out to be pretty solid this year in Jaffrey and a little bit in Ringe. That last column shows the impact on a $350,000 home.
Could you read the numbers? Because it's hard
Yes.
to see.
So if we were to look at Jaffrey, the actual local school rate of 2024-25 is at 1622 for the local. The estimated change would be $3.62. So turning it into a $19.84, rate. Obviously, if there's evaluations done, all these things change, but dollar amounts in the end don't change. The doing the math, impact on a $350,000 home will be $1,268.65. Ringe, the estimated change is not quite as high. It would be $2.37 per thousand. And on a $350,000 home, that would be $830. The majority of that coming from the budget. If there's money that is provided back at the end of this year, that will offset that and change that estimation, which typically is what takes place. Is that what's current?
Yeah.
Oh, so currently we have 283,874 in the trust fund, the construction trust fund, facility, sorry. And this is how it's shared between towns. It's Jaffrey right now with average daily membership is about 51%, 51.5%. There are fewer learners from Ringe, more learners from Jaffrey. And that's what is proposed for going into next year, preliminary conversations, pretty much. And then the 2023 equalized valuation would put Ringe's valuations higher than Jaffrey's. So Ringe being at that 56 3/4 and Jaffrey at the 43%. Combining those percentages of the ADM and the equalized valuation, the combined percent would be 52.56% for Ringe and 47.44% for Jaffrey. And then this is just a slide for the deliberative session on February 5th at 6:30 p.m. in the RMS gymnasium. So
Trying to prolong this at all because it's late. What is the balance in the fund anticipated to be since you've allocated 450,000 out of that fund? What do you anticipate it to be? Last year you gave back, what is it, 1,700,000, whatever that number was. So what do you anticipate? You obviously have a number target. You've already taken 450 of it, so you got to have some number in your head.
sure.
Do you know, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the finance committee actually today.
What do you
so-
anticipate the end balance?
5%.
Pardon me?
We anticipate that we'll have 5% left to put into our retained unassigned fund.
Okay,
So we're looking at somewhere around
1.1.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other item that I have is that if you go back to the other slide with the one before this one, if I'm not mistaken.
This one?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna kind of go back to where John was from the town of Jaffrey.
John Frederick.
Correct. I think you need to carry that Article 2 number out like he described, because it's an interest-only payment in that first year. And you can describe it in the article, but I think you need to kind of put some calculations on here to show it as a tax rate calculation moving forward. And I know it's difficult because you can't use, budgets 3 years down the road, just go 5 years out so people can kind of get a picture. But you probably could use this year's numbers and carry out the bond to see what it looks like. Because you'll have principal and interest in the second year and it'll be a pretty significant number. Not 12 cents, like John indicated. I think that's important so people know what they're getting into. Not only for the article, but also for the budget.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Want to get moving.
Yes, let's get moving. So if there's nothing else, I guess we've all had our time to speak. What we'll do now is adjourn this meeting, open up another meeting and vote on the.
Unless there's anything that the board wants to adjust in
Yeah,
any
this
of
is-
those articles.
This is our last
that would
chance,
happen
right, to adjust
here.
the articles
Yep.
before we vote on, so.
So I can ask if any, 2 is already done. Does anyone wish to amend the Article 3? Okay.
Do you want a motion to approve the warrant article language as presented?
No, we're gonna do that
Yeah,
next.
that's gonna be in the board meeting afterwards. Yep.
Okay.
Or at least whether you're gonna recommend it.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything on any of the other warrant articles?
I don't think we have
Amend
anything here.
anything on,
Yeah.
okay,
We've all looked at this, so.
Yep.
And
fine.
agreed to move it forward, so I think we can get a motion to adjourn and then move directly to the next board meeting where we can recommend these. Or not, these.
Just close the public hearing, move on to the school board meeting, because it's still, we didn't adjourn from that.
Okay,
Okay, and let's take our vote.
sounds good. So we'll adjourn the public hearing and open up the school board meeting. Thank you, Charlie. First item on the agenda.
All right.
Let's review Article 2.
I vote yes on Article 2.
Yeah, let's go,
Right here. So
This
we will
is-
need to have a roll call
this is
vote
the
because
seat-
we have a person online.
Sandy, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Is she still there? Yes. All right, we're gonna do a roll call vote, for the school board on Article 2,
Whether you recommend it. or-
whether we recommend it or not. Sandy?
I recommend it.
Maybe we won't start with Sandy. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Chris? Yes. Sandy?
Yeah, recommend it. Jeez. Chris, can you hear me?
Sandy there?
I guess
She's
if
online, but
she's
she's not
online, but she
answering.
can't get through.
Good night.
I guess if she can't get through, we'll move that to a 5-0-0 pass and move on to Article 3.
Article 3 is the budget.
Article 3 is the budget, so we'll do a roll call vote.
Jen says she can hear Sandy online.
Can you turn, is it the speaker that's down still?
She could also probably text it in, but
Sandy?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. She votes yes. So let's amend that one to 6-0 and move on to Article 3. And Sandy, I'll ask you.
Charlie wants to know if there's discussion.
Yeah, we can absolutely have discussion.
on Article 2.
Article 3?
Article 3, yeah.
Right.
I
Go
just-
ahead.
I just want everybody on the board to know how difficult it was for me to make a decision on this particular article. Including placeholder positions in the budget that artificially increases both the default budget and the proposed budget, but that's not my biggest concern. To me, the budget should be a balance between educational benefit and affordability. From an affordability perspective, this budget will cost the average Ringe taxpayer over $800 more in school taxes. It will cost the average Jaffrey taxpayer over $1,200 more in school taxes. From an educational benefit perspective, our learners continue to underachieve compared to their statewide peers. Only 47% of our learners in all grades are proficient in reading and writing. Only 31% are proficient in math, and only 27% are proficient in science. Furthermore, our academic growth is below state average, meaning our learners are learning at a rate that is less than the average of their statewide peers. Now, we can rationalize numbers all we want, but the bottom line to me is the disparity between the progress of our learners and the increasing cost to taxpayers. In good conscience, I can't justify a 15% local tax rate, school tax rate increase for Ringe and a 22% tax rate increase for Jaffrey based on our academic performance. So I'm going to vote no.
Anybody else have any comments? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Sandy?
Yes, I do have
Oh,
some
okay.
comments.
Thank you, John.
It's hard to see, it's hard to listen to what Charlie just said. And it's also hard to see that we're still working to increase our proficiency rate. We have seen some progress, I believe, in the last several years. But that progress is not there. And I wish we'd had more discussion of what you just shared, Charlie, in previous meetings leading up to this night. And that those comments could have maybe formed the basis of some better planning, some more planning by the school board on how these issues should be addressed. So that's what I would.
I agree with that. We did meet 4 or 5 times on this budget, and some of those comments are the first
I was
times
not
I've been
there
hearing
for the
this.
last meeting. I provided my comments to you, Chris. I wasn't happy at the time with the way we were going about looking at the budget. This particular comments that I made was very difficult for me because I had to boil it down to the real basics, which is what is the educational benefit we're getting and what can we afford to provide? So I based my decision on that.
Well, I respect your statement, but of course, spending less won't help our students.
Well, we've been spending more for years, so I'm not sure spending more is the answer.
No, spending less isn't going to be the answer either.
I didn't say spend less. I didn't say spend as much more either.
Sorry. Any other comments? If not, we'll move to a vote. Sandy?
I appreciate Charlie's comments, but I do recommend this budget.
Thank you, Sandy. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie? No. Christine?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So that is recommended by a vote of 5 to 1 to 0. So move on to Article 4. Have a chance for discussion on this item. We have already discussed this item 3 times as a board tonight. So looking and seeing no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote on a recommendation of Article 4, starting with Sandy.
I recommend this article.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that is recommended by a vote of 6 to 0 to 0. And we'll move to Article 5. Being no discussion, this is a standard item. We'll move to a roll call vote. Sandy?
I recommend this article.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
I also recommend this article.
Charlie?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
And I vote yes. To Article 6. Which is the $50,000 for the Special Education Contingency Fund. Seeing no conversation, we'll move to a roll call vote. Sandy?
I recommend this article.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That is recommended 6 to 0 to 0. And we will go to, I believe, our last article, Article 7. Capital Reserve Trust Fund. Seeing no conversation, we'll move to a roll call vote. So for Article 7, recommendation, Sandy?
I recommend this article.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That is recommended by a vote of 6 to 0 to 0. And I believe that is the last item on our agenda for today. Everyone is left. I guess I would just look for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Christine. I'll second. Thank you, Charlie. So we'll vote. Sandy?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
John?
Aye.
Charlie? Christine?
Yes.
And myself, so that is our adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Ashley, you get the award for hanging in there.
Thank you, Charlie.
As a moderator.
Yeah. Yeah.
At some point, I might say, does anybody have anything new to add? Or does somebody have anything different to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. I hear on the side of letting everyone say everything they had to say. So I can't say I didn't let them say.
Oh, you did.
Great, I'll let them speak.